You think too much. Bailey Honghang spoke slowly. I didn't mean anything else. Bewitching's lips hooked up into an understanding smile. I know wifey didn't mean anything else. Only that meaning I understand. The words he spoke were very ambiguous. What do you understand? Bailey Honghang raised her voice. I'm just trying to help cure your legs. Hearing her words, waves appeared in Bewitching's ocean-like eyes before they quickly returned to their previous teasing appearance. Actually, now I think that staying here to chat about what's uncooked is actually a pretty good idea. TL note. Uncooked is referring to making Hongshuang cooked, aka pregnant. If you don't want to be cured, then forget it. No, if wifey can help her hubby, it's naturally the best. Bewitching added hastily. He smiled innocently, his whole face like a blooming flower. It was an indescribably bewitching scene. Heimu sighed with relief. Bailey Honghang wasn't that aggressive after all. But when he heard that Bailey Honghang wanted to cure his little lord's leg disease, his heart couldn't help but pound with excitement. His little lord's legs had already been crippled for 3 whole years. Many people had already lost hope in his lord, but he had always believed that one day, his little lord would be able to stand up on his own 2 feet. Bailey Honghang's face turned serious as she began to treat Bewitching. Carefully confirming the degree of paralysis in Bewitching's legs, Bailey Hongshuang asked, Can you feel the paralysis developing upwards in your body? Bewitching nodded slightly. There's some. Looking at his placid, handsome face, Bailey Hongshuang couldn't help but admire. This guy was only a teenager, continuing to fight in the face of complete paralysis rather than giving up, and continuing to maintain such elegance. It simply wasn't something a normal person could do. Just by this feature, she knew Bewitching's heart was firm. Wife, do you really know what I have? Bewitching inquired. It wasn't that he didn't believe Bailey Honghang, but he had already visited many doctors, and not one has ever even heard of his illness. Bailey Hongshuang raised her eyebrow. Would I lie to you? Since Bewitching protected her from Bailey Hongshuang, not allowing even a drop to spill on her, her heart was already set on helping him. When she was lonely, there was only Bewitching who reached out to her. Lady Bailey, in the end, what happened to my lord? He was poisoned, right? Heimu couldn't help but ask. He really wanted to know how his awe-inspiring lord's legs suddenly became crippled and fell down from the altar. If it was purposefully done, he won't let him off. You've investigated for so long, but you still haven't found anything, right? Heimu nodded, embarrassed. He had always been ashamed of this. Well, there's no need to look any longer. This isn't due to poisoning. Fengbo's godly doctor said that as well, but also didn't know what it was. Bewitching's face still had a smile. Even though he was talking about such a serious problem, his appearance was as carefree as ever. This is because of your physique, Bailey Hongshuang explained. It's good that the godly doctor was vigilant and could slow down the paralysis. Otherwise it would have been incurable. Physique. Bewitching pondered. Although he had thought of many possibilities, he never thought it'd be due to this. A physique complication was just too rare. Everybody knew about physiques, and his own constitution wasn't very special. Have you heard about the cursed physique? Bailey Hongshuang asked as she took Bewitching's pulse. Out of all the physiques I know, I've never heard of a cursed physique. He knew almost all of the continent's rare physiques, but still, has never heard of such a constitution. Bailey Hongshuang wasn't surprised. The cursed physique is incredibly rare, so it's only natural you've never heard of it. Your cultivation speed used to be very fast, far surpassing an ordinary cultivator's. Bailey Hongshuang smiled quietly. Then your body began to grow paralyzed, starting from your toes and spreading outwards little by little. Now, your cultivation speed is also beginning to slow down. The expression in Bewitching's eyes constantly changed, his heart pounding with shock. He had never told anyone about his cultivation slowing down. Even Fengbo's godly doctor didn't know. Bailey Hongshuang was sure of everything as soon as she took his pulse. Could his body really be a cursed physique? Heimu was shocked. Lady Bailey was indeed godly. Her reputation of a godly doctor was truly well deserved. Can you change my physique? A surge of darkness swirled under the brightness in Bewitching's eyes. Even though his anxiety was well hidden, Bailey Hongshuang still caught it. The smile on her lips grew softer. Of course I can. When the words burst out, Bewitching's deep, ocean-like eyes seemed to bloom with boundless splendor. After 3 years there was finally hope. With her gentle smile, the tension in his ice-cold heart seemed to melt away. However, the process is very difficult. Enduring it won't be easy. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was low and serious. If you can't persevere, then you'll die. If you cannot stand the pain, then it'd be better to just live your life suppressed and crippled. Otherwise, if you were to give up in the middle of changing your physique, it'd be the real fall. Bewitching was calm. He didn't bat an eyelid even when speaking of death, the firm look in his eyes never wavering. Wife, don't worry. This little pain won't beat your husband. Bewitching's voice was low and deep. Although his face was still the same one she had always teased, the look in his eyes was serious. The depths of his eyes reflected Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the determination in those two eyes. Now that you've chosen, I'll help you to the end. By helping me change my constitution, how would you be impacted? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Nothing, just more work. Hearing her words, although Bailey Hongzhuang said it was simple, Bewitching knew it couldn't only be that. Since the process to change his physique was so difficult that he may even die, then Bailey Hongzhuang would also have to work extraordinarily hard. Bailey Hongzhuang took out her bag of needles from the heaven-earth pouch. Before she can change his constitution, the paralysis in the legs must be treated first. Words spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared for Bewitching's acupuncture when suddenly, he grabbed her hand that was about to start. Raising her head a little, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bewitching quizzically. She didn't know why he had just clutched her hand. Bewitching carefully inspected that beautiful and exquisite face. His deep voice slightly hoarse as he asked, "Why are you helping me?" "Why? They've only known each other for a short time. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even know who he was, so why was she helping him?" Staring into those eyes that were as deep as the sea, a little smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. "When you helped me, did you have a reason?" "That's different." Bewitching raised his voice a little. "Aren't you worried that I'll betray you after you cure my legs?" The things he did were just little things anybody would do, but what Bailey Hongzhuang's doing is far beyond that. "Is that important?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. Bewitching was stunned, never expecting for her to give such an answer. "How isn't this important? When you asked me this, I knew you didn't help me for anything but to help me." The smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face grew even gentler. "Besides, even if you were to act against me because of this, I wouldn't care. The decision she chose, she has never regretted." Although she didn't know Bewitching's true identity, although she didn't know why Bewitching was trying to get close to her, she still believed that Bewitching's actions were sincere. Why? Maybe it was because for once there was someone standing in front of her. Maybe because it was the first time somebody could understand her sadness. Maybe it was because her heart was beating for him. Because of this, it was enough. Bewitching suddenly found there was no way to see through Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though he could never understand how her medicinal skills were developed, from the time they've spent together, he had felt Bailey Hongzhuang was very simple. But at this moment, it was like he suddenly didn't know her anymore. How could the problems others cared about so much, in her eyes, be seen with such unimportance? "Why don't you care?" "Because you helped me, didn't you?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If before she was suspicious of Bewitching, now she felt that he was truly a good person. Even though he was usually complicated and wise, his thoughts were clear and simple, and actually he was very kind. Gazing at the sweet, smiling face before him, for the first time Bewitching thought this world was truly complicated. "If there isn't a problem, can I start?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow as she asked. "First, I have to deal with the paralysis in your legs. Changing your physique will need some rare ingredients, but trust that after the physique is changed, your cultivation speed and talent will increase by leaps and bounds. Don't worry." Bewitching nodded. He knew Bailey Hongzhuang was comforting him. Silver needles were inserted into the acupuncture points in his leg. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were careful. Each time the needles were swift and accurate. As early as when Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's conversation started, Heimu had already retreated to the sidelines. If he were to remain there, he'd be nothing but an eyesore. It was better to leave Lady Bailey and his little lord alone so they could get along better. The peach blossom forest was quiet and peaceful, leaving only the silhouettes of a slender white-robed figure and a tall, pale golden-robed figure. The woman sat on the man's legs as he gazed at her. The peach blossoms blew fragrant. Their silhouettes were hazy, creating a dreamlike scene. Once all the needles were accurately inserted into the acupuncture points, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up. The next part is going to be painful. If you can't hold on, don't be afraid to yell. Bewitching nodded slightly. I'll be okay. Let's start. Hearing his words, Bailey Hongzhuang's inner chi burst out. Her right hand waved a silver needle, causing all the acupuncture needles began to tremble. Bewitching could feel a numb tingle spreading through his legs as if countless insects were climbing it, the itchiness almost unbearable. However, a trace of joy appeared in his dark eyes. For 3 years there was never any feeling in his legs, but now he could sense something. The itchiness gradually turned into pain, like a million needles were stabbing his legs all at once. It was one of the most painful things anyone could experience. Bewitching endured the ferocious pain in his legs. On the surface, his expression was very normal without a single sign of pain. Only the big beads of sweat that emerged on his forehead and his slightly wrinkled brow. Could a person have a hint of the pain he felt? Watching Bewitching, a thread of admiration appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Bewitching's mind was truly strong. This pain that ordinary men simply couldn't withstand, he was able to face without even a change in his expression. As Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bewitching, Bewitching also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Droplets of sweat were emerging from Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead, her exquisite face pale. This treatment was very strenuous for her as well. Bewitching's heart was a little touched. Everywhere, there was only people with their own interests as the most important. Nobody would help somebody else without a reason. Living in such an environment for so long, perhaps even he became the same. It was because of this that as he watched Bailey Hongzhuang, his heart was touched. Time went by and the pain intensified. Bewitching's brows grew tighter and tighter. If you scream, I won't laugh at you, Bailey Hongzhuang said. A sliver of a smile appeared on Bewitching's face. She had no idea how much pain he had suffered. Although it was uncomfortable, it wasn't beyond his limits. Compared to before, this was nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang eyed Bewitching's legs, veins faintly popping up from under his knee. As long as those veins could reach the soles of his feet, then the paralysis in his legs would be cured. Master, your cultivation isn't strong enough to keep this up. Little Black was worried. Acupuncture not only consumed mental strength, but also inner chi. Bailey Hongzhuang was only at mysterious Earthrealm's late stage. Her strength was insufficient. I understand that. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was pale. From the start, she never intended to completely cure Bewitching today. Just hold on for 1 more minute, and the treatment's time can be shortened even more. Bewitching also saw how pale Bailey Hongzhuang's face was and suddenly pulled her. You already can't persevere, let us stop here. Looking at his handsome face filled with anxiousness, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and didn't insist. The silver needles returned to its case. Then come here every day. In 7 days' time your legs should be completely cured. Okay. I'll be going to rest now. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around, but the consumption really wasn't small. Although she knew how to treat him, her cultivation was far lesser than before, so the burden was much larger. Bewitching's right hand tugged, and Bailey Hongzhuang fell straight onto his chest. What are you doing? Bailey Hongzhuang was startled. I'll bring you back to the house. No, I'm not that weak. Don't move. I'll carry you back to the house. Bewitching's voice was firm without hesitation. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up. His deep, ocean-like eyes were sincere and worried. She sighed a little and no longer tried to refuse. When Bewitching left, the 2 fluff balls jumped on the bed, their faces puzzled. Master, why did you want to help Bewitching? Little Black's face revealed confusion. It wasn't like Master's temperament to have the losing side of the deal. There's things that just don't have a true answer to them, Bailey Hongzhuang said quietly. Bewitching was a deep, unknown mystery, and she knew with certainty that there were many secrets undiscovered regarding him. It was also quite likely that he had a large power behind him. From the view of others, those with power had a limitless view. But she knew the sorrows that came with power. They could never speak with feelings. If they didn't have enough strength, then they'd only be trampled underfoot by others. Going from a peerless genius into a cripple, one could only imagine the torment he felt inside. She had already spent some time thinking about him. There wasn't any real harm to her. Even though this wasn't following her way of life, this time she was willing to make an exception. The next few days, Dibei-chan stopped by Jingli Garden every day for Bailey Honghang's acupuncture. The paralysis in his legs lessened little by little. He only needed to wait until the 7th day before he could stand up again. On this day, Bailey Honghang took out Qin Yuyun's diary. This was where Qin Yuyun wrote out her feelings. She also wanted to know what were Qin Yuyun's thoughts. In the expanses of letters, Bailey Honghang could clearly see the love in her heart Qin Yuyun had for Bailey Zhentao. She believed that after she married and became a general's wife, her life would be content. She never imagined that she'd be thrust into an abyss. From the beginning, the text was filled with anticipation and longing before falling into a terrible, lonely end. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed quietly. Her mother had loved the wrong man from the start. Turning to the last page in the booklet, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly found that 2 pages were stuck together. She could clearly see that words were written inside. Why would she take all the trouble to glue the last 2 pages together? Only after carefully prying the 2 pages apart while keeping them intact, could Bailey Hongzhuang see the text written inside. With just a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Her heart constantly jumped in surprise as she read through the paper. Even when she finished, her heart couldn't calm down for a very long time. Because it stated, she was actually not Qin Yuyun's daughter. At first, in order to compete for Bailey Zhentao's love, Qin Yuyun lied that she was pregnant. Although Bailey Zhentao had no doubts about it, Su Wanjing was very dissatisfied. The next day, Bailey Zhentao didn't see Qin Yuyun, who claimed that she was going to give birth. Originally, Qin Yuyun made plans with a woman who was pregnant. The baby would be brought to her as soon as it was born. But when the birth family found that the baby was a boy, they were unwilling to give their child to the maid, letting Qin Yuyun fall into a pit. Just as Qin Yuyun was panicking, not knowing what to do, the maid suddenly found a baby just outside the gates. This baby was Bailey Honghang. So it turns out, I'm not Qin Yuyun's and Bailey Zhentao's child. Bailey Honghang was shocked. But after thinking it through, she was actually very content. Bailey Zhentao was never a man she wanted as a father. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang knew there weren't any blood ties, she could breathe a sigh of relief. Only, who are my biological parents? Why did they leave me at the general household's gates? Bailey Honghang frowned a little. According to Qin Yuyun's description, her body was covered with blood at the time she was found, which meant her parents must have been forced to leave her there. So what exactly happened with her parents? Were they even still alive? From the remnants of Qin Yuyun's belongings, Bailey Hongzhuang found a piece of white jade. This was hanging on a pendant from around her neck. It was the only evidence that she and her biological parents could recognize each other with. Later that night, Dibei-chan watched the absent-minded Bailey Hongzhuang, his voice concerned as he asked, "Wifey, what's going on with you today? What is it?" Since the second he saw Bailey Hongzhuang today, she was always thinking about something else. Even when she talked to him, her voice always sounded very panicked. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head a little. Nothing. After learning the shocking news, she'd been thinking about what the truth might be. But using a single piece of white jade to search the wide sea, it was just too difficult. Dibei-chan stared deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and suddenly spoke. "Although I'm not sure what exactly happened, you can trust me. If you ever need my help, just give me a call." Dibei-chan's face was serious. He truly wanted to help Bailey Hongzhuang. She immediately nodded, "Thank you." Dibei-chan didn't say anything else. If Bailey Honghang wanted to tell him, then she would have told him. If she didn't tell him, then he wouldn't ask. "You came for your acupuncture." Bailey Honghang smiled. "After today, you'll be able to stand up and walk again." Dibei-chan's lips widened into a smile. "You've worked hard." These days he could clearly feel the paralysis growing weaker and weaker. It was completely healed down to his calves, but there was still no perception in his feet. But after today's treatment, he'd be able to stand up again. The gratefulness Heimu held in his heart for Bailey Honghang could reach the heavens. Ever since his little lord's legs were crippled, he had never seen him smile from his heart for a long, long time. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang, his lord was able to return his former self. Bailey Hongzhuang packed up the silver needles, her face pale. Her lips were in a wide grin. Try standing up. Dibei-chan was a little surprised. After living in a wheelchair for so long, he had almost forgotten how to stand up. Now, as he listened to Bailey Honghang, his heart trembled with no reason. Maybe it was because he had looked forward to this day for too long. Now that the day has come, a hint of fear arose in his heart. If he couldn't stand up, then wouldn't he just be plunged right back into that deep dark abyss? Bailey Hongzhuang silently laughed but smiled to encourage Dibei-chan. She had seen many patients who couldn't walk like Dibei-chan, and could understand the feelings he felt right now. Dibei-chan's face returned to its usual calmness as if he was preparing his heart. He placed his hands on the wheelchair and slowly stood up. Feeling the sense of being on the ground again, a splendid smile broke on Dibei-chan's face. For the first time in so long he finally stood up. Slow footsteps. Dibei-chan walked a few steps, then suddenly, he dived into the peach blossom forest, breaking into a run. He ran so fast that nobody would have ever believed that he was sitting in a wheelchair for so long. Bailey Honghang smiled brightly. As a doctor, watching a patient run cured was naturally a good thing. Heimu was enraptured, almost too excited to say anything. Lord stood up. He truly wanted to shout it out to the world. 3 years. Their little lord has finally stood up. Dashing forward, a figure suddenly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, wrapping her into his embrace. The fragrance of peach blossoms assaulted her senses. Her body was stiff. Dibei-chan's face beamed with smiles as he leaned forward to whisper into her ear. Thank you, thank you. 2 simple words, overflowing with gratitude, repeated twice. Bailey Honghang didn't understand what standing up could mean for him. The stiffened body in his bosom relaxed when she heard his words. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, you're welcome. When Dibei-chan stood up, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly discovered he was actually very tall. Lying in his embrace, she could only reach his chest. His posture was straight, shoulders broad and muscular. It felt comfortable and safe. When Bailey Honghang returned to rest, Dibei-chan couldn't help but recall the gentle fragrance that he had cradled softly in his arms. Although he didn't know why he would suddenly make such a move, it was good that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't refuse. After Dibei-chan was cured, he acted as if he was still crippled in front of outsiders. Now wasn't the time to expose himself. But every night, Dibei-chan went to Jingli Garden with his true appearance. Bailey Hongzhuang once again retreated into closed-door cultivation. Other than going to Godly Doctor Square, she was always in her room within Jingli Garden. Right now, increasing her strength was the most important. Dibei-chan didn't bother her, only sitting quietly in the peach blossom forest until the night goes dark and he leaves. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang was skillfully refining some immortality pills. Her pill refining skills had always been good, and coupled with her spirit power, the potency was greatly enhanced. Refining such low-level immortality pills were very simple for her. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang once again went to Godly Doctor Square and directly took out a white, porcelain bottle from her heaven-earth pouch. The display case she had asked Du Tianxua to set up a few days ago would finally be used today. Noticing Bailey Honghang's actions, Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu gathered up in front of her. Lady Bailey, what are you going to sell? Dong Sairu wondered. Godly Doctor Square's business was blooming, so he couldn't understand what she was trying to sell. If the product has nothing to do with Godly Doctor Square, then it wouldn't be good for the shop. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. If you open it and take a look, won't you know? Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu glanced at each other before immediately picking up the porcelain bottle to take a look inside. Their eyes widened as they stared. These are immortality pills? Du Tianxua asked in disbelief. Right? Du Tianxua swallowed his saliva. There were so many pills inside that porcelain bottle. How many immortality pills were there? A single immortality pill alone was already worth a massive price. With so many pills, Du Tianxua simply couldn't imagine the sum. Lady Bailey, where did you get these immortality pills? Dong Sairu asked excitedly. Immortality pills were always in constant demand. There were only a few pill masters in the imperial city, and very rarely shared their pills. Lady Bailey was too capable, managing to grab so many at once. I refined it. Bailey Honghang smiled. You go and prepare some nice packaging to wrap the immortality pills in, put the price directly with the label, and make it 20% higher than Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's prices. Listening to her words, Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu felt their bones go soft. Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's price for the immortality pills are already very high. If we raise our price 20% higher, everybody would go to Heavenly Jewel Pavilion. Where would our business go? Even if we can't sell, just leave it on the aisles. We're not short on money, and besides, it's impossible to not sell a single one. The reason why the price should be raised by 20% is because the pills she refined were 20% more potent than the average immorality pill. Although Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's price was slightly cheaper, there was no way they could have as much pills as her. Right now, all the officals were preparing for the royal hunting feast. The moment to sell immortality pills for the low-leveled cultivators couldn't be better. Seeing Bailey Honghang so confident, Du Tianxua and Dong Sairu obediently started to get the brocade boxes to wrap the pills. Only the brocade boxes could match the immorality pill's value. They've always believed in Bailey Hongzhuang. That's because so far, every single action she had done was enough to make one praise her to the heavens. Every day there were 10 patients. Each of those 10 patients were seen as untreatable by other doctors, but once they saw Bailey Honghang, they would walk away healthy. There wasn't one person Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't cure. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was far younger than them, her medicinal skills were absolutely superb. As long as they walked by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, their lives would be full of honor and glory. News that Godly Doctor Square was selling immortality pills was quickly spread amongst the city. After all, Godly Doctor Square was always busy, and many people had long noticed the new aisles. With a glance, everybody discovered that Godly Doctor Square was actually selling immortality pills. And furthermore, their quantity was even higher than Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's. Bailey Yuyan's mood was terrible. She had just finally gotten close to Du Hanyue with great difficulty when Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly barged in, wrecking everything for her. Sister, being angry isn't good for your health. Bailey Haoxuan comforted her. Bailey Honghang fought for this one breath, and wasted 200,000 gold coins. She isn't a pill master, so the pill furnace would be nothing but an useless ornament when she brings it home. Listening to his words, Bailey Yuyan dipped her head a little. Her face was full of hard to conceal hatred. The day us pair of brother and sister get our hands on a cultivation pill will be the day we destroy Bailey Honghang. We couldn't ask Pill Master Yun to refine us a cultivation pill, so we'll need to find some way to buy them. I'd rather we ask Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's shopkeeper to see if they could find some way to get us 2 pills. It's useless. Bailey Yuyan sighed. I already asked. Right now, everybody's rushing to buy a cultivation pill, and Heavenly Jewel Pavilion stock has long been sold out. Right now, they're still waiting on a new shipment, and it's not sure when it'll arrive. Cultivation pills were for low-level cultivators to stabilize their foundation and boost their cultivating speed. There's no better time for young practitioners to take a cultivation pill than now, right before the Imperial Hunting Banquet. Now, the levels of strength in the younger generation were almost the same. Whoever could get a cultivation pill, their strength would grow to be a cut above the rest. It'd be very helpful for winning first place in the hunting banquet. Not everybody could get a cultivation pill, but Bailey Yuyan heard that the Prime Minister's daughter, Li Yuyue, had already obtained one. Bailey Haoxuan also frowned. He despised Bailey Hongzhuang so much that he wanted to go to the Godly Doctor Square to teach her a lesson right then and there. As they worried, a conversation at a nearby table suddenly caught their attention. Did you hear yet? Godly Doctor Square started selling immortality pills, and many families had already bought cultivation pills there early morning. Furthermore, I've also heard that the price is even 20% higher than Heavenly Jewel Pavilion's, but there were still a lot of people willing to buy it. Cultivation pills are nice, but it's too expensive for us to even hope to obtain. The Imperial Hunting Feast is very close, so all the court's younger generation are fighting for resources. Selling them now, Godly Doctor Square must make a killing. Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan looked at each other, their faces in stunned dismay, even wondering if their ears had gone bad. Godly Dr. Square even sells cultivation pills? Bailey Haoxuan directly walked over to that nearby table and asked, "Is what you're saying actually true?" Their conversation having been suddenly interrupted, the three men were very unhappy. But after recognizing Bailey Haoxuan's identity, they didn't dare to reveal any dissatisfaction and could only nod. "It's true." How could Godly Dr. Square sell immortality pills? Bailey Haoxuan's face was baffled. Maybe it even had a lot of immortality pills. Could it be true Bailey Hongzhuang is actually a pill master? Bailey Haoxuan couldn't help but cry out. Impossible. Bailey Yuyan didn't hesitate to refute Bailey Haoxuan's guess. Just look at her. How could she be a pill master? In all of Shangxua continent, pill masters were a noble existence. The harsh conditions alone is enough to stop countless people from becoming one. Trash like Bailey Hongzhuang as a pill master? What a joke. Bailey Haoxuan also thought his guess was ridiculous and immediately smiled, embarrassed. Why don't we go and check out Godly Dr. Square for ourselves? What they hear could be false, whereas seeing is believing. They would know once they went over to take a look. Bailey Yuyan nodded, "Let's go." When the two arrived at Godly Dr. Square, they found a large crowd of people, all discussing the cultivation pills. This Godly Dr. Bailey is really too godly. She can even bring out such rare immortality pills to sell. I heard that these immortality pills were actually personally refined by Godly Dr. Bailey herself. Simply unbelievable. I never expected that Lady Bailey hit herself so deeply. Thinking back, we were truly laughable. When Bailey Yuyan heard that Bailey Hongzhuang herself refined the immortality pills, a mocking look appeared in her eyes. That woman was just begging to get shot in the mouth. Even after following Master Yun to learn the art of pill refining for so long, Du Hanyue was still only a pill master apprentice. He still wasn't even able to form the immortality pill's shape when he refined. Bailey Honghang spent more than 10 years in the general household. It was impossible she could have contacted a pill master, so how could she have possibly refined that? Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan squeezed through the crowd before they could finally spot the pills lying on the shelves. Perfectly rounded immortality pills sat in the center of a brocade box. It was actually the foundation stabilizing cultivation pills they needed the most. Staring at the number of cultivation pills in that box, the two's eyes looked at each other in shock. They did everything they could to get their hands on a single cultivation pill, but there were actually so many in Godly Dr. Square. Bailey Yuyan's eyes were filled with endless jealousy. How could Bailey Hongzhuang, who she could step under the sole of her feet, have so many cultivation pills? "Sister, should we buy two?" Bailey Haoxuan asked aloud. Although there was enmity between them and Bailey Hongzhuang, the hunting banquet was very soon. Right now, it was most important to increase their strength and give a good performance. Bailey Yuyan was silent for a moment before nodding her head. Okay. When the two walked up to the shelves, the crowd burst into sighs, many raising their brows. Since the drafting banquet, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Yuyan's animosity towards each other became very well known and talked about. For Bailey Yuyan, who had poisoned Bailey Hongzhuang blind, many people thought she was too vicious and slowly grew estranged from her. Now that the siblings came to Godly Dr. Square, they were naturally happy to watch. 2 cultivation pills. Bailey Yuyan directly told Dong Sairu. A cultivation pill was 50,000 gold coins. Although it was 10,000 more gold coins than Heavenly Jewel Pavilion, 2 pills were still cheaper than flattering and asking Du Hanyue. It just so happened that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't here right now, so she could buy a cultivation pill and tilt the scales. Bailey Haoxuan's face was full of joy. Before the royal hunting feast, he could finally get his hands on a cultivation pill. Dong Sairu looked at the 2 Bailey siblings and couldn't help but snicker in her heart. Lady Bailey's prediction really came true. Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan actually came. Noticing Dong Sairu didn't move for a long time, Bailey Yuyan couldn't help but frown. "Give it to me," our boss said. "The pills can be sold to anyone but those of the general's household." Dong Sairu's voice was apathetic. This stupid woman was too vicious. She bullied their boss for so many years, and still wants to buy an immortality pill from here. Dream on. Hearing her words, Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan's faces both became black. It was Bailey Hongzhuang. The crowd couldn't help but laugh. Bailey Yuyan was always so evil. It was only right for Bailey Hongzhuang to not sell her anything. Bailey Hongzhuang isn't here right now. How about I give you 1,000 extra gold coins as a gift and you can give me 2 cultivation pills? Bailey Yuyan asked, her voice hushed. She can't ignore her image in front of so many people. This was the only way. You want to bribe me? A trace of disdain appeared in Dong Saira's eyes. No way. When they were down and broke, Bailey Hongzhuang was the one who gave them a job. Now, not only did she treat them very well, and even freely taught them her medicinal skills, she always felt that she was most fortunate to have the honor to follow by Bailey Honghang's side. Let alone 1,000 gold coins, even if it was 10 million gold coins, she wouldn't hesitate to refuse. The two of you go. Godly Dr. Square doesn't welcome you. The words Du Tianxua was even more impolite. He could feel nothing but disgust for the two. They were an eyesore just standing there. Watching Du Tianxua and Dong Saira's attitude, Bailey Yuyan was furious. What are you? Daring to speak to me like that? You must be impatient to die. She was the eldest miss of the general household. Her identity couldn't be compared to a commoner, so how could she let the guys look down on her so much? Bailey Hongzhuang's face was cold. If you don't want to die, obediently hand over the immortality pills. Losing your life for Bailey Hongzhuang isn't worth it. I never thought that a Bailey-born son would actually threaten to take a human life just for some cultivation pills. The light, sweet voice held traces of disdain and contempt. Everybody saw a white figure slowly walking out from inside Godly Dr. Square. Who could this person be but Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Hongzhuang's faces changed. With the current situation, they fear that they'd be ridiculed in every way possible. Only 1,000 gold coins, isn't Lady Bailey just too stingy? Her exquisite jade-like face revealed a small smile, but the depths of her black eyes were cold. By Li Hong. Shuang. Bailey Yuyan spat between clenched teeth. She didn't know when Bailey Hongzhuang started acting this way after forgetting to teach her a lesson. These immortality pills were brought by somebody else to sell to everybody, so why are you not letting us buy them? Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was chilly. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Who told you these immorality pills were brought here to be sold by someone else? If it wasn't, is it possible you refine them yourself? Bailey Yuyan asked mockingly. Yes, it's what I've refined. Bailey Hongzhuang, I never knew that you were actually so shameless, able to talk nonsense without the least bit of embarrassment. Bailey Yuyan's words were merciless, oozing with ridicule. She wanted to show everybody Bailey Hongzhuang's true colors. Bailey Hongzhuang still smiled coldly, her voice menacing. Your eyes can't see what I've refined? Besides, even if I didn't refine the immortality pills, so what? If I say don't sell, it's not for sale. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her voice. Godly Dr. Square doesn't welcome anyone of the general's household. If someone buys a pill and gives it to the general's household, once discovered, shall never enter Godly Dr. Square again. The indifferent, cold voice was overbearing and decisive, clearly resounding in everybody's ears. Whoever was weighing the scales in their hearts immediately perished the thoughts once they heard her words. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang's medicinal skills or a large number of cultivation pills in Godly Dr. Square, it all reflected just how powerful Godly Dr. Square was. Going against Godly Dr. Square for the general's household, it simply wasn't worth it. Bailey Yuyan was livid. Bailey Hongzhuang, you're bullying us. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened, becoming all the more enchanting. I'm bullying you, what can you do about it? You're courting death. With a loud roar, Bailey Hongzhuang's inner chi suddenly erupted around his body as his right hand formed a fist, forming winds as he mercilessly punched towards Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Does this woman really think that they wouldn't dare to raise their hands against her under the glare of the public eye? He needed to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson, letting her fully understand just who it is that's superior. The light in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes sharpened, astonishing bursts of murderous intent as her eyes opened. She held out her hands in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, welcoming his punch. Bang! Inner chi collided, sparks flying in the air. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw Bailey Hongzhuang stretch out her hands, his heart suddenly got a bad feeling. It was well known that Bailey Hongzhuang was unable to cultivate, and that Bailey Hongzhuang was a practitioner in the intermediate stage of mysterious earth realm. If the fist flies down, Bailey Hongzhuang might get seriously injured. But under everybody's astonished eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang actually held Bailey Haoxuan's fist in her hands. Bailey Hongzhuang was completely unharmed. Bailey Haoxuan looked at her, horrified. Although he had already known she could cultivate the night she left the general's household, he still believed that no matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't be his opponent. But in that tight grip, he could clearly feel that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually even stronger than he was. This is impossible. Bailey Haoxuan was stunned as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Just when did she start cultivating? Bailey Yuyan was also shocked. She knew that Bailey Haoxuan didn't hold back just now. But even so, Bailey Hongzhuang was still alive. What could that mean? You quickly let go of me, Bailey Haoxuan roared. Subdued by Bailey Hongzhuang in front of so many people, it was just too shameful. What if I don't let go? The light in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes was cold. It was always Bailey Haoxuan's arrogant manners that had disgusted her the most. If you don't let go, I'll kill you. Bailey Haoxuan's voice hardened, growing even colder. Bailey Hongzhuang dared to make him lose so much face. He needs to kill her. It looks like you still don't know the current situation. An enchanting laugh spilled out from her cherry-red lips, but her ink-black eyes were covered in ice. The next moment, under everybody's stunned gaze, the palm of her hand ruthlessly struck Bailey Haoxuan's wrist. Gotcha! The crisp sound of broken bone rang in everybody's ears, followed by Bailey Haoxuan's piercing screams. Ah! Drip! Drop! Drip! Drop! Blood dripped onto the ground, its deep red color provoking everyone's eyes. Bailey Haoxuan's hand was crippled by Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Yuyan was still standing in the same place as before. Everything had happened too fast, and she never thought Bailey Hongzhuang would even dare to fight back against Bailey Haoxuan. When she finally reacted, it was too late. Bailey Hongzhuang, you dared to hurt Haoxuan. Could it be that you really don't want to live? Bailey Yuyan's voice was angry. Bailey Haoxuan was Bailey Zhentao's only son and was always deeply loved. Now Bailey Hongzhuang dared to break his hands. Isn't she afraid of earning Bailey Zhentao's wrath? I never did anything to you in the past, but didn't you just try to kill me? Now saying such words to me, isn't it laughable? Since the start she was always in the worst position, so what else does she need to worry about? Bailey Yuyan was startled. She couldn't refute Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Bailey Hongzhuang, I will not let you off. Bailey Haoxuan clenched his teeth. His eyes had gone completely red with blood since birth. He had never been so seriously injured. Looking into his eyes full of hatred, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to him, her right hand patting Bailey Haoxuan's face. TSK, that look is really fierce. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice changed. Did you know, for the past 14 years, I've been using that expression to stare at you? The words Bailey Hongzhuang asked were in a whisper. Bailey Haoxuan couldn't help but tremble. He suddenly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was truly frightening. If you're smart, then the next time you see me it's best to make a detour. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as a single hand that's broken. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up and looked at Bailey Yuyan and Bailey Haoxuan indifferently. Now scram. Her charming face livid with anger. Bailey Yuyan really wanted to just rush up to Bailey Hongzhuang and hit her. But right now, Bailey Haoxuan's situation couldn't be delayed. They needed to find a good doctor as soon as possible to treat his hand. Otherwise, Bailey Haoxuan's life would be ruined. After the two siblings left, the crowd felt endless emotion. This Bailey Hongzhuang was truly different. Handling her matters ruthlessly without dragging her feet, everyone shivered. But when they thought of what the Bailey siblings had done, they could only feel that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were right. If you were lenient with them, they'd only come back more ruthless. The news was quickly spread around the imperial capital, and Bailey Hongzhuang started to become a very influential figure in the city. Bailey Hongzhuang refused to sell her immortality pills to the general's household, and had even crippled Bailey Haoxuan's hand in front of everybody's eyes. Prime Minister Li Chengxian's people, and those who weren't on good terms with Bailey Zhentao were all enjoying the chaos. Who knew Bailey Zhentao would be so blind? In their opinion, between Bailey Zhentao's three children, Bailey Yuyan, Bailey Haoxuan and Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang had the most potential. But now she had become Bailey Zhentao's opponent. It was just too funny. A single Bailey Hongzhuang could beat Bailey Jintao left and right. Jingli Garden. I heard you taught Bailey Haoxuan a lesson today? Bewitching asked, smiling. Bailey Honghang nodded a little. News spreads fast in the imperial city. It had only been a short 4 hours since it happened, but so many people already know. Bailey Haoxuan is Bailey Jintao's treasured son. Now that you've crippled his hand, I'm afraid that Bailey Jintao won't forgive you. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrow. She wanted to know why Bewitching mentioned such a thing. I think we should marry earlier. Once you're my wife, Bailey Jintao no longer have the least bit of influence over you. What do you think? Bewitching smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little startled. She never expected for Bewitching to come out with such a story. Her mind thought rapidly as she gazed at Bewitching. Suddenly she smiled. Good. Bailey Hongzhuang was still under Bailey Jintao's influence. Outsiders didn't know what happened inside the general household's walls. So many people in the imperial city were calling her unfilial and disrespectful. Bewitching saying such a thing now meant he was worried for her. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang agree so happily, Bewitching's smile grew more and more brilliant. His eyes that were like shattered gems glittered brightly. If you don't mind, I'll start preparing the betrothal gifts. Bewitching grinned quietly. Bailey Hongzhuang slightly frowned. I've cut off all ties with the general's household, so I wouldn't be marrying from that house. No problem. Bewitching wasn't surprised. So then how about you marry from Jingli Garden? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Her actions would have certainly been seen as random or stupid by others, but Bewitching always understood what she thought. Little Lord Bailey Jintao was furious when he heard about what happened, and was preparing to go teach Lady Bailey a lesson at Godly Doctor Square. Heimu's face was heavy as he reported to Bewitching. Should I send some people to teach Bailey Jintao a lesson himself? Although he knew his lord would refute it, he just couldn't help it. When Lady Bailey wasn't good, she was treated unjustly by the general's household. Now Bailey Haoxuan even threatened to kill her, saying she was an unfilial daughter. Before, when Bailey Yuyan had blinded Lady Bailey, they've never seen Bailey Jintao give Bailey Yuyan the slightest bit of punishment. Send someone to warn Bailey Jintao. Make sure not to expose our identity. Bewitching's eyes glimmered with cold light. Bailey Hongzhuang was one of his people. Whoever dared to bully her, he'll never let off. When Heimu heard Bewitching's words, he couldn't help but stare at him, stunned. Usually when he proposed the idea, his little lord would never agree. How could it be different now? Could it be because of Lady Bailey? I'll start at once, Heimu said excitedly. Wait a minute. Bewitching suddenly stopped him. Heimu couldn't help but worry. His little lord didn't change his mind, right? Cripple that old codger's hand as well. As you wish. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang went to Godly Doctor Square as usual, waiting for Bailey Jintao to come and cause trouble. With Bailey Jintao's temper, once he knew she was the one who crippled Bailey Haoxuan's arm, he'd never let her off. But after waiting a whole day in Godly Doctor Square, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even catch a glimpse of Bailey Jintao. A touch of doubt appeared in her eyes. Bailey Jintao, that old codger isn't going to not come, is he? Little Black asked as he hopped. Little White also thought it was strange. I doubt that old crank's kind enough to. As Bailey Hongzhuang thought, Ji Wenbin walked over smiling. Bailey Hongzhuang, I heard something funny, haha. What's so funny? Yesterday, didn't you cripple Bailey Haoxuan's hand? Ji Wenbin's face was full of glee. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, everybody knew about that yesterday. What's funny? Ji Wenbin waved his hands. That's not the funniest part. The funniest thing is that just today, the general household's General Bailey Jintao's hand also got crippled. Bailey Honghang was startled. Is that the truth? Of course it's true. I've only just heard myself, but pretty soon everybody would know. Ji Wenbin laughed. The general's household has been bullying you for so long. Now the evil they've done are being repaid in kind. Her exquisite face smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of Bewitching. Could this matter be because of him? Currently, the general's household was in chaos. Su Wanjing knew that Bailey Haoxuan's right hand was broken. Although the doctor had reconnected the bones, it would take 3 months to completely heal. He wouldn't be able to participate in the royal hunting feast. She was hoping for Bailey Jintao to go and teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson. Her precious son had never been injured for so many years. Bailey Hongzhuang dared to hit Haoshuan. It was absolutely unforgivable. But now Bailey Jintao was actually in front of her, clutching his lacerated right hand. "Lord, what happened to you?" Su Wanjing asked, concerned. Bailey Jintao's expression was very ugly. "Nothing, don't ask." The facts were difficult to accept. Before he could even see his appearance, he was punched, and his right hand directly crippled. Although Bailey Jintao didn't know who that person was, he knew the man had some sort of relationship to Bailey Hongzhuang. Just before he had disappeared, a few words were whispered into his ears: "Don't bother Bailey Hongzhuang, or suffer the consequences." He was terrified. He wasn't at all an opponent for this man who was able to quietly sneak into the general's household. If he were to look for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang, he's afraid that the general's household will have it difficult. At this moment, Bailey Jintao suddenly felt very regretful. If he knew Bailey Hongzhuang had such a large force supporting her, he never would have treated Bailey Hongzhuang the way he did. Godly Dr. Square alone was a humongous treasure. Moreover, isn't it even selling immortality pills there now? Then thinking about all those years spent protecting the useless Bailey Yuyan, he just couldn't understand why he had made such a choice. Seeing how serious Bailey Jintao looked, Su Wanjing didn't dare to ask any further. She turned and said, "Lord, no matter what, you need to get revenge for Haoshuan." That was what had originally made Bailey Jintao worry so much. Now that he heard Su Wanjing mention it again for some reason, his heart felt incredibly annoyed. His skill was inferior to the person who hit him, and now you want me to accompany him in losing face. Bailey Jintao flew into a rage before pointing his finger in Bailey Yuyan. His voice furious, "Know your place a little and don't go leave the household to cause trouble again. You can't bother Bailey Hongzhuang again, understand?" Bailey Yuyan looked at Bailey Jintao stunned. Why would father suddenly protect Bailey Hongzhuang? Su Wanjing was also stunned. Last night he had clearly said that he'd teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson she wouldn't forget. How did his attitude turn a complete 180 from last night? After his wound was dressed, Bailey Jintao left. Today really made him worry. The sunlight was golden, shining brightly. It was a fine spring day. When Bailey Hongzhuang left her room, she suddenly found that Jingli Garden had changed greatly. The maids and manservants shuttled around the estate. She almost even thought she was in the wrong place. Her face was stiff as she walked around. Looking at the familiar peach blossom forest, Bailey Hongzhuang knew she wasn't at the wrong place and immediately walked over to Jingli Garden's gates. "Congratulations to Lady Bailey! Congratulations to Lady Bailey!" When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang come out, the maids and manservants immediately started to bow and congratulate her. The look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face was strange. She didn't know what was wrong with these people. Then she saw the red lanterns being raised high into the air. The usual peaceful calm in Jingli Garden turned bright and festive. Outside the gates, the carriages were constantly unloading items. Watching the scene that was full or red, two words instantly popped up in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind: dowry. Sure enough, Dibei-chan popped up in front of her. "Wifey, are you satisfied with your hubby's dowry?" Looking at the piles of gifts in front of the gates, a smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. Just barely. The betrothal gifts were extremely extravagant compared to other women when they married. Even when a royal prince married, there'd still only be half as much. Just barely enough? Dibei-chan pretended to frown. "Turn around and take a look." Although Bailey Hongzhuang was confused, she still turned her head. She didn't understand just what Dibei-chan wanted her to see. "Master, look. The name plaque changed." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes to look at the signboard, and discovered that the three characters Jingli Garden had been replaced at some unknown time to Qingzhuang Garden. "Wifey, this is also one of the betrothal gifts," Dibei-chan said with a smile. The loud noises had already attracted many people. At first, many people were skeptical when they saw Dibei-chan bringing the betrothal gifts to Jingli Garden. Didn't the emperor marry Dibei-chan to Bailey Hongzhuang? However, Dibei-chan didn't bring the betrothal gifts to the general's household, but instead here. It was just too strange. But when everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang come out of Qingzhuang Garden, Everybody instantly had a flash of understanding. So Bailey Hongzhuang was living here. Prince Chen's betrothal gifts are so generous. It's much more than the other prince's gifts. One person exclaimed. Other royal marriages were also very lavish, making others feel amazed. But none of them could compare to Bewitching's astonishing betrothal gifts. Note Qinzhuang takes the zhuang from Hongzhuang's name, and Qin means to marry. This proves Prince Chan cares a lot about Lady Bailey, but Lady Bailey is just too great of a woman. I don't think any number of betrothal gifts could be able to equal her in worth. Everybody nodded their heads. Xinyuan Huan and Bailey Zhentao must have been blind. Such a good woman like Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't lose at all compared to Li Yuyue and Bailey Yuyan. It was Prince Chen's good fortune. But Prince Chan should have went to the general's household to bring the betrothal gifts. If he brought everything to Qinzhuang Garden, then where would the general household's face go? Hearing his words, everyone was stunned. Right, isn't the Prince Chan just treating the general's household like air by doing this? Haven't you guys seen how stiff Lady Bailey's and the general's household relationship was? Maybe it's Lady Bailey's own idea. Everybody suddenly understood. Earlier in Godly Doctor Square, Bailey Hongzhuang and the two Bailey siblings' relationship was extremely terrible. If her days in the general's household was full of suffering, then it was much better for her to just leave and live outside. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile grew soft as she watched the servants bring the gifts into her house. In that moment, she felt as if everyone else's thoughts were meaningless. As long as she and Bewitching could understand each other's, it was enough. Presenting such lavish betrothal presents here. Aren't you afraid of offending Bailey Zhentao? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Bewitching raised his long eyebrows. The reason why son-in-law fears father-in-law is because he's worried that father-in-law won't allow his daughter to get married. Since you've promised me, husband and wife would naturally make a united front. You hate. I hate even more. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curled into a smile. I'm very happy with these betrothal gifts. There's a propitious day in 7 days. I told the emperor to let us wed on that day. What do you think? It's your choice. But our marriage is nothing but a scam. It isn't real. Bailey Hongzhuang stressed the words. Bewitching didn't seem to care and just nodded. I understand. But if wifey wants us to start as an act, and later truly falls in love with me, I won't mind. Bailey Hongzhuang needed him to avoid trouble, and he also needed her to pull wool over others' ears and eyes. Getting married, it was a win-win situation. I'll mind. Wifey, your hubby will be sad if you say that. That's enough. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at him, smiling quietly. I'm in a good mood. Let's go out and eat. You're in a good mood? You aren't lying? Of course. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching went to eat and drink at the restaurant happily, Bailey Zhentao's lungs were bursting in rage. This Bewitching's going too far. He didn't even give me the least bit of face. Bailey Zhentao viciously threw a teacup on the ground. The imperial city was big and rumors were easily spread. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's marriage was just too eye-catching. Everybody knew that Li Chengqie was just waiting for a chance to embarrass him. Now he just became the biggest joke of the imperial city. Father, it must have been Bailey Hongzhuang who asked Prince Chen to do this. Prince Chen wouldn't have any reason otherwise. Bailey Yuyan's face was livid. Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were growing more and more excessive. Lord, I believe Bailey Hongzhuang dared to do this because we didn't retaliate back. If we don't do something, I'm afraid that girl will become even worse. Su Wanjing's eyes were glittering with hatred. She really couldn't wait to kill that girl. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Haoshuan would have never missed his chance to present his brilliance, full of glory at the royal hunting feast. Later. Nighty-night. This is too outrageous. I must go and ask the emperor to discipline Prince Chan. Bailey Zhentao was furious. He was always respected his whole life. When was he ever so humiliated? Lord, why aren't you going forward to teach that girl a lesson? Su Wanjing asked unhappily. Is it because that girl had prospects so you wanted to repair your father-daughter relationships? Right now, Bailey Hongzhuang was a very powerful figure in the imperial city. Whether it was her medicinal skills or the immortality pills, the absolute majority of influential officials all wanted to build a relationship with her. It wasn't surprising for Bailey Jintao to have a similar idea. Talking nonsense. Bailey Jintao angrily rebuked. Nobody asked you to speak. With a flip of the hand, that mysterious man could have easily ended his life. Between pride and his life was naturally more important. So viciously denounced by Bailey Jintao. A small glimmer like crystal couldn't help but appear in the corners of Su Wanjing's eyes. Throughout the years, the general had always treated her very well. Ordinarily, he would usually never say any cruel words to her. But now because of Bailey Hongzhuang, she's been scolded many times already by the general. Bailey Yan snuck a look at the sad Su Wanjing and couldn't help but stand up. Father, any discerning person could see that this was Bailey Hongzhuang's fault. So why would you still want to protect her? If you had the ability to beat that girl, then I wouldn't be so upset. Bailey Yan's face paled. The hate in her heart for Bailey Hongzhuang was at its extreme. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang, then her looks never would have become like this. The Imperial Palace. Xianyuan Yutian and Jiang Jining were playing Go together. Xianyuan Yutian placed down a black stone. I'm afraid Bailey Jintao would have vomited blood from anger by now. Jiang Jining followed up, laying down a white stone as she said. He's taking the consequences for his own actions. If Bailey Jintao had never treated Bailey Hongzhuang so terribly, she never would have done these things. In fact, she would have even grown to become his backbone. Oh, Xianyuan Yutian raised an eyebrow. You think Bailey Hongzhuang's good? Jiang Jining quietly smiled and nodded. I think this girl's quite unique. What might the emperor think? This time Bailey Jintao was blind. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would have become a very good candidate to become the crown princess. Xianyuan Yutian sighed. If he hadn't found out so late, then he never would have rescinded Huaner and Bailey Hongzhuang's engagement. But an emperor's words wasn't a joke. Even he felt that it was a pity it couldn't be changed. Today, news about Bewitching's betrothal gifts have already spread it everywhere in the imperial city, and left no face for Bailey Jintao. If he comes to the palace, emperor. Jiang Jining hesitated. Bewitching's identity was very special, and also knew that the emperor was currently caught in a very difficult situation. I'll have to soothe Bailey Jintao. Xianyuan Yutian's eyes were very complicated. Although they've already been silent for 3 years, we still can't take them lightly. We can't let Bewitching make a move. Jiang Jining's eyes grew startled, understanding what Xianyuan Huan meant. This time they can only wrong Bailey Jintao. Time trickled slowly as the next 3 days passed. During that time, Bailey Hongzhuang never caught even a glimpse of Bewitching, who was preparing for the wedding. Instead, she became a complete idler, holed up all day in Godly Doctor Square and Qinzhuang Garden, asking nothing of the wedding. Qinzhuang Garden's changes weren't small at all. Bewitching brought over waves after waves of nannies, maids and manservants to put Qinzhuang Garden in order. Bright red colors could be seen everywhere in Qinzhuang Garden, the air full of festivity. Although everybody moved around busily, thick joy could be seen on their faces. Their prince was finally getting married. The sky still wasn't bright as nannies and maids all clustered around Bailey Hongzhuang's body, waiting for her to put on the red dress before beginning to help Bailey Hongzhuang apply her makeup. Everything was done step by step and everyone was very busy. Bailey Hongzhuang was similar to a doll as people draped jewelry on her and combed her hair into a chignon. She never thought that a marriage would actually have to be so complicated. She finally understood why Bewitching was so busy to the point where she couldn't even catch a glimpse of him. Just understanding these customs, the personalized wedding dress, and looking for an experienced nanny alone would take an unimaginably long time. Master! Master! The black and white fluff balls were tragically tossed aside by the nanny and bumped into a maid before dropping on the floor. Many people were busily walking the 2 fluff balls under the constant threat of being trampled on. Hearing their cries, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly discovered their situation and immediately withdrew them back to the primordial chaos ring. Any later, and they might have been stomped flat as a pancake. Ji Wenbin, Dong Sairu, and Du Tianxua arrived at Qinzhuang Garden early in the morning. They had long known that Bailey Hongzhuang had wanted to marry from Qinzhuang Garden, and wanted no relation to the general's household. Usually it was very lively when a bride was to be married. But the huge Qinzhuang garden had only Bailey Hongzhuang and no family members to give their blessings. It was rather regrettable. Since they were her friends, they decided to come today and act as her family. At the very least, they sincerely hoped for Bailey Hongzhuang to be happy. When they entered Bailey Hongzhuang's room, the three people were frightened. The room was just like a battlefield. Groups of servants surrounded her as they unceasingly stacked various things on her face, hair, and body. Dong Sairu shrank his neck. Princess's battle plan for marriage is really unusual. I've never seen a strategy like this. It'd be strange if you have seen one. Du Tianxue laughed. The princess's identity is honored and dignified. If it wasn't for Brother Ji kindly introducing us, we simply never would have gotten the chance to see a princess's wedding. In such a boring situation, Bailey Hongzhuang could only think about how slow the time was. Finally, the nanny looked at her and nodded with satisfaction. So beautiful. This is the most beautiful princess I've ever seen. Not only the nanny but the other people in the room were also stunned when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang. This beauty was enough to ruin a kingdom. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at herself in the bronze mirror. For a few seconds she couldn't help but be completely stupefied. Her long black hair was pulled up high, combed into a unique, elegant bun that was perfect for a princess, slender willow-like brows gentle and elegant. A pair of phoenix eyes glittered brightly, a hint of red on her cheeks. Her fine jade-like nose was small and delicate, cherry-red lips holding a charming luster. What was most notable was the specially painted peach blossom drawn between her brows, just like Qinzhuang garden that was full of peach blossoms. It symbolized the flowers Dibei-chan had gifted her along with the house, the feelings between her and Dibei-chan. Her ivory-like skin was as smooth as water, coupled with a large red gown. It radiated nobility and grace, peerlessly elegant. Everything was ready and all the people in the room retreated outside. All that was left was to wait for the auspicious time to arrive, for the prince to escort the bride to the wedding. Seeing Ji Wenbin and the others enter the room, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth to reveal a bright smile. You've come? But Ji Wenbin, Dong Sairu and Du Tianxue just stood there, frozen in place. Looking at the beauty in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang full of grace and incomparable elegance, a kind unspeakable shock appeared in their hearts. So beautiful. This was a beauty beyond their wildest imaginations. In that moment they clearly understood the gap between them and Bailey Hongzhuang. The general's household's eldest miss, the crown princess, she was even more beautiful than both of them. Usually when they were together, Bailey Hongzhuang had never acted proud or arrogant. They've never really thought of any real distance between them and the amiable Bailey Hongzhuang. But seeing her now, they discovered just how large the distance between them was. Hongzhuang, you're so beautiful today. Not even the most beautiful lady in the imperial capital can compare to you at all. Dong Sairu praised honestly, her voice full of excitement. She swore that she never saw anyone as beautiful in her entire life. Even though she was a woman as well, she wasn't the slightest bit jealous because she clearly knew of the distance between them and instead looked up to her. Before, the imperial city never seriously chose who was the most beautiful woman in the imperial city, but many people believed that Bailey Yuyan was the most beautiful. The rumor vanished once Bailey Yuyan was disfigured. After Bailey Yuyan was disfigured, the prime minister's daughter, crown princess, Li Yuyue, was believed to be the most beautiful by the public. Originally, the best woman in the imperial capital was Li Yuyue and Bailey Yuyan had just wandered in. But now that Bailey Yuyan was disfigured and lost her qualifications, the title of most beautiful naturally fell back on Li Yuyue's head. Nowadays, Li Yuyue was extremely proud and grew more and more arrogant, openly proclaiming her title as the most beautiful woman in the imperial capital. But in Dong Sairu's eyes, Li Yuyue couldn't even compare to Bailey Hongzhuang. Ji Wenbin and Du Tianxue also nodded their heads. Her beauty was simply unforgettable. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled but didn't put Dong Sairu's words in her heart. An unwarranted title just held no meaning for her. Hongzhuang, I wish you happiness. Ji Wenbin blessed heartfully. He had always seen Bailey Hongzhuang as a sister, and now looking at Bailey Hongzhuang in her red wedding dress, his heart sighed with emotion. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were soft. I'm very lucky to have such wonderful friends like you all to accompany me on my wedding day. Since the moment she'd left the general's household, she always felt lonely. But now as she looked at the three bright, smiling faces in front of her, she realized that was never alone. Hongzhuang, today you aren't getting married from the general's household. The general's household? Ji Wenbin frowned slightly. This was just blatant contempt at the general's household. Shouldn't you fear the general's rage? After all, this marriage was something the whole city watched. And even the emperor himself will come. If Bailey Hongzhuang is marrying from Qinzhuang Garden, where would the general's face be put? Will the general even attend the wedding? If Bailey Jintao didn't attend, then there isn't anything to talk about. But if Bailey Jintao did attend, it wouldn't be leaving him any face at all. Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow. Whether they come or not, what does that have to do with me? She had already broken all ties with the general's household and wasn't even related to the general's household by blood. If she marrying today will lose the general face, then all these years, the general had never given her any face. After more than a decade without a shred of dignity, bit by bit she'll start to earn it back. Bailey Jintao needs a good taste of shame. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude, the three looked at each other in blank dismay. It seems like Bailey Hongzhuang and the general's household's relationship was already irreconcilable. I'm just worried if you do that, Bailey Jintao will do something on the big day. Bailey Hongzhuang laughed. With the emperor's presence, as long as he has a brain, he wouldn't dare to try and cause trouble. Hearing this, the three realized they were worries of Bailey Jintao coming to ruin the wedding in anger were meaningless. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned it, with the emperor present, Bailey Jintao can only swallow his anger. General's household. Bailey Jintao, Su Wanjing, Bailey Yuyan, and Bailey Haoshuan were gathered in the front hall. Their faces all very ugly. They had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have no choice but to return to the general's household to get married. After all, marrying alone from another place was just simply too sad. They've even had a good time thinking of ways to ridicule her before preparing Bailey Hongzhuang for the marriage. But all day there wasn't even the slightest bit of news. Only today were they completely sure that Bailey Hongzhuang was marrying from Qinzhuang Garden. She was completely ignoring the general's household's existence, marrying from somewhere else. Even Dibei-chan didn't ask them so much a single question before arranging the wedding all by himself. They never even put the general's household in their sight. Bailey Hongzhuang and Dibei-chan are too much. Bailey Yuyan spoke angrily. Like this, they didn't give the general's household any face at all. Bailey Jintao's face was gloomy. Throughout his life, he was always respected, but never expected to lose face twice because of Bailey Hongzhuang. The last time, the emperor only comforted him a little, and did nothing to punish Dibei-chan. In the end, he could only swallow his anger. He couldn't understand. Last time he could tell the emperor clearly didn't favor Dibei-chan, so how could his attitude suddenly turn a complete 180? Lord, since Bailey Hongzhuang never put us in her sight, let's just not attend the wedding. Su Wanjing's normally gentle face was filled with hard-to-conceal anger. She truly regretted not directly killing Bailey Hongzhuang earlier. Hearing Su Wanjing's words, Bailey Jintao's anger exploded. The emperor himself bestowed the marriage and is even personally attending as a guest. If we don't come, won't we be seen as disrespecting the emperor? This was what he was the most furious at. Bailey Hongzhuang's actions simply left him with no other way out, trapping him. Did Bailey Hongzhuang think of all this a long time ago? If so, then Bailey Hongzhuang was just too terrible. He had been worrying since yesterday. If he attended the wedding, then Li Changqian would be able to taunt him to death. Just the thought of it was enough to make his scalp turn numb. Su Wanjing was startled. She never thought of it that way. Lord, are we not going to go? Su Wanjing's expression was ugly. She originally wanted to see that girl crawling back meekly, but now that she even had to attend her meeting, her heart simply couldn't stand it. Nonsense. Bailey Jintao looked at Su Wanjing disgusted. This woman simply had no brains at all. She couldn't help him with any of his troubles and asked him about every single thing. It was just sickening. Su Wanjing's face paled. Just now, she had clearly seen disgust in Bailey Jintao's eyes. She had been married to Bailey Jintao for many years. Even though there was at first a Qin Yeyun, Bailey Jintao had never been angry at her. And now, because of Qin Yeyun's dar, Bailey Jintao is actually beginning to hate her. Thinking up to here, Su Wanjing's tears couldn't help but flow out from her eyes. Lord, how could you do such to me? Bailey Juntao was originally vexed, and when he saw Su Wanjing tears spill out, his heart had a burst of irritation. All day you only know how to cry. What else can you do but cry? Su Wanjing's figure trembled as the tears grew more and more violent. An unspeakable sadness spread from the bottom of her heart. Seeing this, Bailey Haoxuan took a few steps forward and spoke, Father, since we can't do anything now, we might as well participate in the wedding with dignity. No matter the outcome, you are still a honored general. Who dares to tell us what do? Even if that Prime Minister Li taunts us, it's no big deal if we just ignore them. I believe that he wouldn't dare to call us out just to mock us. Bailey Juntao's face relaxed slightly as he proudly looked at Bailey Haoxuan. In this family of his, only Bailey Haoxuan could share his worries. As for Su Wanjing and Bailey Yuyan, they were only good for causing trouble. The auspicious time arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang left Qinzhuang Garden, surrounded by a cluster of nannies and maids. In the garden, Bailey Hongzhuang saw a martial out-of-the-ordinary figure clad in red. Dibei-chan sat on a horse and had donned a matching red robe. His bewitchingly handsome face held an enormous smile, exuding happiness like a sun-radiated heat, attracting everyone's attention. In that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt as if a beloved person of hers was getting married and laughed, her laughter permeating with delight. Dibei-chan was also shocked as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had always thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be very beautiful with her makeup and hair done as a bride. But what he saw today far surpassed his imagination. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang's usual look, it was less pure and elegant but more charming and enchanting. A smile capable of stealing a person's soul. He had never thought about what he wanted his bride to look like. But in that instant he knew he wanted his bride to look like this. The two pairs of eyes met, sharing a smile worth 1,000 words. Under the sounds of firecrackers and blessings, Bailey Hongzhuang got on the bridal palanquin. She was slowly carried to Chun Imperial Palace. Chun Palace was lively. Many guests had arrived and were all laughing and talking about the wedding. I heard that it was Prince Chun who took the initiative to set the wedding date today. It seems like Prince Chun is really looking forward to marrying Bailey Hongzhuang. Haha. Who doesn't look forward to marrying a beautiful woman? Didn't you see that His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, was acting like he lost his soul? Sure, you can't say that aloud. One man said hastily. After today, Bailey Hongzhuang would become Princess Chun. If you pull back what happened between Xianyuan Huan and Bailey Hongzhuang, today would be the day of your death. The person who said it naturally knew what he said was wrong and laughed hollowly. Do you think the general's household will come today? Bailey Hongzhuang and Prince Chun didn't even put them in their sight. The emperor will be coming soon. Bailey Juntao wouldn't dare to disobey the emperor's orders, so he'll definitely come. I think Bailey Hongzhuang was taking revenge. We all know very clearly just how the general's household treated her. The guest's face changed. This was the most watched wedding in the imperial city. The former crown prince's wife is marrying Prince Chun to become Princess Chun, while also completely disregarded her paternal family, making the general's household to lose face. Just the thought of this made them all feel that this wedding will be very interesting. For Bailey Hongzhuang to marry from Qinzhuang Garden, many people thought that Bailey Juntao just got what he deserved. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't cultivate, she was after all his daughter. It wasn't right for Bailey Juntao to treat Bailey Hongzhuang so shamefully. Two daughters, yet they were treated so differently. Why wouldn't Bailey Hongzhuang be so cold to the general's household? The firecrackers crackled and everyone's faces revealed anticipation. The bride had arrived. Dibei-chan and Bailey Hongzhuang moved together to the front hall. Their bright red garments attracted everybody's eyes. Seeing Dibei-chan sitting on his wheelchair, everybody's heart sighed with emotion. A man of such peerless grace and elegance just had to be a cripple. If it wasn't for that, the two would truly be a great match. Just then a sharp voice sounded. His Majesty, the Emperor has arrived. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince has arrived. Everybody turned to bow. The fact that the Emperor himself is personally attending was enough to prove just how important the wedding was. Everybody may rise. Xianyuan Yutian smiled and spoke. Today is Prince Chun and Princess Chen's joyous day. Everyone may relax. Thanks the Emperor. Li Chengxian's mood was currently very good. This wedding today made Bailey Jintao lose enough face. The Emperor had already arrived now, but Bailey Jintao still hasn't come. Once this crime was pinned on you, it wasn't a small deal. But when he rose his head, Li Chengxian's face couldn't help but change. Bailey Jintao and the rest of the general's household were standing just behind the Emperor and Crown Prince. I didn't expect that General Bailey would actually come with the Emperor. Li Chengxian tested the waters. Xianyuan Yuqian chuckled. Just so happened to run into each other outside the palace and decided to come in together. Hearing this, Li Chengxian's face darkened. Bailey Jintao had really good luck. Bailey Jintao also looked at Li Chengxian darkly. After being rivals for so long, he was very clear what kind of things Li Chengxian plotted in his heart. Now that the Emperor was here, he wouldn't dare to say a thing. Since everybody is here, let the wedding begin. Xianyuan Yuqian took the initiative and sat down on the highest seat. This was a position meant specially for him. For the Emperor to personally come for the wedding, it was an unsurpassed honor for Chan Palace. Now everyone focused on the figure walking in. Earlier, she had just entered when the courier announced the arrival of the Emperor. Everybody was focused on the Emperor, and almost nobody took any notice of the bride's appearance. With one look, a stunned light emerged in everybody's eyes. Before, everybody had some understanding about Bailey Hongshuang's looks, but now they could only feel like the rumors were too modest. Was Bailey Hongshuang just attractive? No, she was an absolutely stunningly beautiful woman. Her looks were peerless in the world. Bewitching was known as the imperial city's most handsome man by the public. Any woman, no matter how beautiful, would only lose their light when standing next to him. But now as Bailey Hongshuang stood next to him, everybody could only sigh emotionally. They were simply a match made in heaven. Wow, this Princess Chan is truly beautiful. We didn't see her for a few days, and she seemed to have grown even more gorgeous. Who was it that said the most beautiful woman in the imperial city was Li Yuyue? In my opinion, Princess Chan is the real most beautiful woman in the imperial city. Right, if I could marry such a beautiful woman, I'd be willing to give away 10 years of my life. Everybody praised generously. Many of the people in the crowd were actually Bailey Hongshuang's patients. Furthermore, many of their younger generation was preparing for the hunting feast. The cultivation pills that godly Dr. Square sold helped them a lot. Therefore, they were all very grateful to Bailey Hongshuang. If it wasn't for her, how could so many of their problems be solved so easily? Xianyuan Huan stared at the perfect, delicate face in front of him. He had known Bailey Hongshuang for 10 years, but never ever had he truly looked at her. In his heart, Bailey Hongshuang was always trash that wasn't at all worthy of his status, and whose appearance that couldn't even begin to be compared to Bailey Yuyan. And now, looking at her face that was glowing with good health, it was Bailey Yuyan who simply couldn't begin to be compared with her. Such beauty should have been loyally following him. It was him that should be in the groom's position right now, but now it had nothing to do with him. The thought of Bailey Hongshuang becoming Bewitching's made his chest feel unspeakably tight, his heart full of regret. The minute Bailey Yuyan entered Chan Palace, her eyes were always on Xianyuan Huan. Now as she watched Xianyuan Huan stare fixatedly at Bailey Hongshuang, her heart had a burst of irritation. She turned her eyes to look at Bailey Hongshuang. She wants to see just how beautiful Bailey Hongshuang's red wedding dress was to steal Xianyuan Huan's soul. With just a glance, Bailey Yuyan's face turned extremely ugly, her heart crazed with jealousy. How could this woman become so beautiful in such a short amount of time? Sensing Bailey Yuyan's envious stare, Bailey Hongshuang slowly turned her head to look at her. The eyes met, sparks flying in the air. Bailey Hongshuang's exquisite, beautiful face formed an enchanting smile as she looked at Bailey Yuyan disdainfully. The present Bailey Yuyan had nothing to do for her. Even looking at her was a waste of time. Seeing Bailey Hongshuang's attitude, Bailey Yuyan was so angry that her face turned red. Bailey Hongshuang was really too hateful. First, pay respects to the Emperor. Bewitching and Bailey Hongshuang obediently paid respects to the Emperor. But nobody could see the disdain and unwillingness present in Bewitching's eyes. Luckily, he didn't want to cause any drama and restrained himself. Xianyuan Yuqian calmed down and smiled. accepting Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching's bow. Second, bow to heaven and earth. Hearing the shout, Bailey Juntao's face stiffened. Since the emperor was here, they must first pay respects to the emperor. But then second, you must pay respects to the parents. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang actually directly proceeded to bow to heaven and earth. Wasn't this just completely ignoring them? Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to heaven and earth. Husband and wife bowed to each other. Everybody looked at each other blankly. It looks like the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and the general's household has truly become completely unfixable. Marrying not from the general's household but somewhere else, and now even completely ignoring Bailey Juntao under the glare of the public eye. This was truly leaving them no face. Bailey Juntao's face was livid, his fists clenching tightly under his robes, the blue vein protruding on his forehead clearly showing the fury he felt inside. This unfilial daughter, daring to not give him any face in front of everyone. The light in Xinyuan Yutian's eyes sunk. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang were going too far. Isn't the second step bowing to the parents? What do you mean by this? Xinyuan Yutian slowly opened his mouth and spoke, his behavior aggressive to Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang. The hall was in silence as everyone's eyes focused on Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that the emperor won't stand for it, what will they do? Bailey Yuyan's face looked like she was watching a play. This time she wants to see how Bailey Hongzhuang will continue acting so arrogant. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was calm and unhurried as she spoke, replying to the emperor. The truth is, a few days ago, General Bailey has already chosen to cut off all family ties. If not so, I wouldn't be marrying from a place elsewhere of the general's household today. In fact, she didn't even know that Bewitching would handle this matter so thoroughly, even going as far as to ignore the second step, bowing to the parents. But this was perfect for her. Taking advantage of this opportunity today, she can finally put an end to all and any relationships with the general's household. She doesn't need such a gang as family. By breaking off all ties, she can also free herself from a lot of worries. At the very least from then on, the general's household will no longer be qualified to find trouble with her. Bailey Hongzhuang's words fell. Bailey Juntao's face changed, and the crowd was stunned as they watched. Everybody knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the general's household were in conflict with each other for a long time, but they didn't expect for Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Juntao to even cut off all father-daughter ties. If it was like this, Bailey Hongzhuang held no fault at all. Since she no longer had any relationship with Bailey Juntao, then of course she'd be marrying from Qinzhuang Garden. How could she possibly still marry from the general's household? Bailey Juntao looked at Bailey Hongzhuang angrily. He couldn't believe this girl actually dared to speak about this to the emperor. Bailey Yuyan's face, who was watching Bailey Hongzhuang like a play, had long been changed to worry. Bailey Hongzhuang sure was ruthless, directly forcing the general's household into an unjust situation. Although everybody silently ridiculed the general's household situation today, nobody thought that they did anything wrong. But now that Bailey Hongzhuang opened her mouth, everything became the general's household's fault while she was free of any mistakes. Xinyuan Yuqian never expected to receive such a reply. His gaze landing on Bailey Juntao's body. General Bailey, is what Princess Chan said true? Bailey Juntao's face was embarrassed, and for that moment, he couldn't make up an answer. Seeing Bailey Juntao's reaction, Xinyuan Yutian easily understood the situation. So what Bailey Hongzhuang had said was true. On that day, this prince personally saw his future princess being forcefully kicked out of her home by the general's household. So this prince gave her Qinzhuang Garden as a betrothal gift. Bewitching suddenly raised his voice, his tone a little disdainful. General Bailey, are you saying you aren't satisfied with this prince as a son-in-law? In her mind, Bailey Hongzhuang was laughing wildly. Bewitching's ability to twist the truth and turn black into white was in no way lesser than her own. Pushing the blame on the victim, yet not forgetting to wash his hands clean of any responsibility. Hearing his words, everyone was in an uproar. Now they could completely understand why Bewitching had directly ignored the general's household whilst conducting the wedding ceremony. If the general's household wasn't satisfied with him, then why must he go and cast his own misfortune? Xinyuan Yutian's eyes flashed with displeasure. If Bailey Juntao wasn't satisfied with Bewitching, Then doesn't that mean he also wasn't satisfied with him for bestowing the marriage? Bailey Zhentao looked at Bewitching. They've clearly never interacted before, but his words clearly revealed his dissatisfaction. Bailey Zhentao added this on Bailey Hongzhuang's tab. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang telling Bewitching, then how would Bewitching have such a misunderstanding with him? Emperor, this official was only unhappy and said those words in a moment of anger. By no means was I unsatisfied with the marriage. Bailey Zhentao hastily argued back. It really wouldn't be good if the emperor formed a bad opinion of him because of this. Although Bailey Zhentao quickly clarified himself, the emperor's face was still stiff as he turned and waved his hand. Continue the wedding. Everybody looked at each other in dismay. It looks like a rift had been created between the emperor and General Bailey. The ritual finished, and Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the wedding room with the help of a nanny. The nanny left after saying some things, leaving Bailey Hongzhuang in the room alone. Bailey Hongzhuang relaxed. Getting married was truly too exhausting. In comparison, Bewitching had to entertain the guests outside and must be even more tired. Master, that Bailey Zhentao is definitely out of luck this time. Little Black said with a laugh. Just a look at that old codger made his mood turn bad. Now watching Bailey Zhentao dumbfounded speechless, he was very happy. At the very least, because of this, the emperor is very dissatisfied with Bailey Zhentao. Probably now, Bailey Zhentao will have to behave with his tail tucked under his legs. Little White's eyes curved into crescents. She was always worried whenever she watched Bailey Zhentao rage at Bailey Hongzhuang. Now it was time for revenge. Haha, from now on, we won't have to see that old codger's disgusting face. Little Black and Little White's tiny faces were full of glee. Although the marriage was no more than a farce, now Bailey Zhentao doesn't have any qualifications to speak to Bailey Hongzhuang. Now their ears can finally be clean. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a faint smile. Bailey Zhentao and the rest of the general's household must be on tenterhooks right now. Even though she knew that she wasn't Bailey Zhentao's daughter, she still wanted justice for the previous dead Bailey Hongzhuang. Master! So much yummy food on the table. Little Black's eyes stared at the food and wine. Since he came in, he was always attracted by the fragrance. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Today, her mood was quite good as she waved her hands. Eat. Taking care of the guests won't take a short time, so she might as well fill her stomach. The moon rose on the tip of a willow branch, the night like water. When Bewitching opened the door and saw the mess on the table, a smile appeared on his face. He didn't feel anything strange about the scene. After all, the woman he married was in whichever way, completely different from an ordinary woman. This was Bailey Hongzhuang's charm. Wifey, I'm here. Bewitching slowly went in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, a smile on his face. Bewitching seemed to have drank a large amount of liquor. His bewitchingly handsome face flushed like he was drunk. It was very different from the day. Seeing how Bewitching could still remember to act crippled even when drunk, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with admiration. This man really wasn't simple. It was hard on you. Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow, speaking casually. Bewitching frowned. Is this the only thing wifey wants to say to me? What else? Bewitching smiled ambiguously, turning to pour 2 cups of wine in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. He handed her one of the 2 cups. May we live happily together until our hair grows white from old age. Bailey Hongzhuang was startled. Looking at the faint smile on Bewitching's face, she had no clue if he actually serious or just joking. This marriage is nothing but a mutual cooperation with each other. You can't be too serious about it. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Wifey's spoiling the fun. Bewitching pretended to be unhappy. On the wedding night, you should still say something. Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to dispute Bewitching's nonsense. Right now, that guy couldn't even distinguish between what was true and what was false. She clinked her glass to his. Happy cooperation. Bewitching's smile brightened and he raised his cup, draining the wine in one shot. With a beauty accompanying me, this wine becomes much more rich. Bailey Zhentao already left? Bailey Hongzhuang asked calmly, her voice unhurried. You left him no face in front of everybody. How could he continue to stay here? Bewitching asked back. He made an excuse saying he didn't feel well and left. Tiske, now I'm afraid he completely hates me. Saying this, Dibei-chan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang innocently, his eyes clear and bright. Wifey, you must comfort my wounded heart. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled quietly. You were the one who provoked him first. Even she didn't expect for Dibei-chan to go so far to skip the wedding vow, not giving Bailey Jintao the slightest bit of face before using words to force him into an awkward situation. Wifey, you can't say things like that. I did it for you. Listening, Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. But inside her heart was touched. Dibei-chan did this accounting for her emotions. No matter what, doing so in front of the emperor, it was a very heavy risk for him. He knew this, but he still chose to do such a thing. That was enough to explain everything. After a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang quietly spoke, "Thank you." She was very clear that even if the emperor was personally attending, there was no way she could bring herself to bow to Bailey Jintao. With that, the situation would have become even more difficult to end. His deep, ocean-like pupils flashed with a ray of light as a dubious smile suddenly bloomed on Dibei-chen's face. Wifey, now you're my princess. Why speak so formally? This long-awaited spring night is bitterly short, and talking will only waste time. Won't it be better to do something more meaningful? By the time he finished, Dibei-chen's tone was extremely ambiguous. Bailey Hongzhuang's face reddened. On a wedding night, she naturally understood what husband and wife were supposed to do. Yes, the night is deep, it's time to sleep. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Dibei-chen's eyes flashed. He was looking forward to Bailey Hongzhuang, but instead, she just went and prepared to sleep on the bed. Wifey's words are right. The night is good, truly good for sleeping. Deliberately saying the word good twice, Dibei-chen's mouth was blooming with flowers. But the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang threw 2 blankets at Dibei-chan, the smile on her mouth elegant and charming. Since you're having a hard time, sleep on the ground and have a good rest. Finishing her words, she directly turned and laid on the bed, using her actions to prove her point. Watching Bailey Hongzhuang, a helpless smile appeared on Dibei-chen's face as he looked at the 2 blankets in his hands. But even so, a spoiling, loving light appeared in his eyes. Seeing how Dibei-chan didn't do anything but lie on the ground and sleep, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Even with having lived 2 lifetimes, she still had no experience. Lying on the soft bed, it took a long time for Bailey Hongzhuang to fall asleep. Maybe it was because she'd had never slept on such a soft bed in elegant Daylily Pavilion. It took her a while to adjust. Or maybe it was because there was never a man breathing in the room as she slept. Wifey, is the candle too bright for you to sleep? Dibei-chan asked, concerned as he suddenly got up from the floor. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be surprised and immediately pointed. The red candle's too bright, I'm not used to it. Her heart couldn't help but feel a little guilty. In fact, she couldn't sleep because of Dibei-chan. The room turned dark as Dibei-chan blew out the candle. Now wifey can rest well. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang replied, and the room fell into silence. Oh well, she just won't sleep tonight and have a good rest tomorrow. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang heard light footsteps coming from outside the door. Although the footsteps were actually very quiet as a cultivator, her hearing was far above an ordinary person's and almost immediately discovered them. It's so late, who would be sneaking around outside their door? Just when Bailey Hongzhuang was about to get up to see who was being so sneaky, her body was suddenly pinned down by a large silhouette. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help and scream, but Dibei-chan covered her mouth, not allowing a single sound to leak through. Dibei-chan leaned close to her ear, his voice low as he whispered, "The walls have ears, someone may be listening." Hearing his voice, Bailey Hongzhuang's tense body relaxed a little as she started to think. Only the emperor could have sent these people. Although she still wasn't clear what Dibei-chen's identity was, she knew that the emperor was very wary of him. As for the rumor about him being an illegitimate child, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't believe it at all after learning his true strength. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Dibei-chan and gestured for him to get down. Just how much longer does this guy want to lie on her body? Although Dibei-chan wasn't very heavy, this face-to-face posture, it was just too ambiguous. Wife, you're so beautiful. Dibei-chen's voice was low and hoarse, his eyes staring at this woman whose beauty could overturn entire cities, and a strange feeling spread in his heart. Moonlight peeked through the window, spilling in the room. It was just barely enough to see the other's face, beautiful and hazy, making the atmosphere even more intoxicating. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. This was the first time she saw Bewitching's face up close. She could clearly feel his breath on her skin, burning hot yet somewhat itchy. She couldn't help but want to shrink her neck away. The pair of bewitching deep eyes were glowing with a dazzling light. Even the starry sky was lost to his sparkling eyes. The two stared at one another. In that moment they almost forgot about the people standing outside the door. In their eyes there were only each other. The room was extremely quiet. Bailey Hongzhuang could clearly hear her own heartbeat hammering in her chest. Thump, thump, interrupting her usual calmness. In my opinion, Prince Chen definitely won't have a problem. Princess Bailey is such a rare beauty. Who would deliberately choose to miss the opportunity? But why isn't there any sound? Outside the room they were putting their ears on the door, listening for any movement inside the room. Although they weren't sure why they were given such a job, since the higher-ups told them to do so, they could only do it. Bewitching rapped his knuckles on the headboard and moved a little. Hearing the sounds, understanding smiles appeared on the two faces outside. It looks like they can report back with accomplishments. As the two's footsteps walked away, Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved. The two were finally dealt with. You can get down now. Bewitching looked at her with a smile. Wifey, you're blushing. Even in the room's dim lighting, he could still see Bailey Hongzhuang's reddened cheeks. Love and affection suddenly filled his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang felt her body turn stiff as his hot breath fanned her face. Her voice was hard. You want a lot. Oh. Bewitching raised an eyebrow, deliberately dragging his voice. Originally this was, you hurry up and get off. Bailey Hongzhuang was ashamed into anger. At first she wanted to directly kick this guy off the bed. But then she feared it'd be too loud and the two people outside would hear. And second, because this guy's strength was so big, she couldn't even push him. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, the smile in Bewitching's eyes deepened. Usually, Bailey Hongzhuang always looked calm and indifferent. It was the first time he saw other emotions in her eyes, and although it was anger, he still felt it was very cute. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned shocked as Bewitching's handsome face slowly approached her. She immediately pushed against him, but his body was like an unmoving hill. This guy was viewing her as a joke. Just as Bewitching's face was about to touch Bailey Hongzhuang's lips, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly jerked her head to the side. His warm breath blew on the nape of her neck as he raised his head to whisper words that made her ears turn red. Wifey, you're really cute. Bewitching's words were spoken with sincerity. Bailey Hongzhuang was truly so cute that others just couldn't resist. If you don't get down, I'll give you a taste of life worse than death. Bailey Hongzhuang grinded her teeth. This guy dared to tease her so much. She had to let him see her power. Bewitching's face changed slightly. He could clearly feel Bailey Hongzhuang bending her knees. His little wife can really be ruthless. Suddenly, Bewitching's lips hooked up into a bewitching smile. He tightly hugged her and reversed their positions. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang laid on his body. Wifey, you're too cruel. Bailey Hongzhuang was also stunned for a moment, being hugged tightly by Bewitching. Both her hands rushed at Bewitching. This man was just too hateful. Seeing how Bailey Hongzhuang was truly unhappy, Bewitching caught her hands and smiled quietly. Okay, I'll stop teasing you. Saying so, Bewitching released his hands, allowing Bailey Hongzhuang to leave his arms. Looking at Bewitching's appearance after taking advantage of her, Bailey Hongzhuang snorted coldly. She won't care about this guy any longer. But in her heart she was actually sulking. If she had more time to cultivate, then she never wouldn't have been suppressed by this guy. When they had fought with each other, the jade pendant also fell with the outer robe of her dress. When Bewitching saw the jade, the light in his eyes sharpened. Wife, where did you get the jade pendant from? Listening to Bewitching's almost shocked voice, a light flashed in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Bewitching's tone clearly revealed that he knew something about the jade pendant. Since Bailey Hongzhuang found this, the only proof of her identity, she had always been carrying it around on her body. She could only hope that she could find her biological parents sometime in the future. Just the jade pendant couldn't really mean anything. In her view, trying to find her parents with the jade pendant alone was just too difficult. She never thought that there was someone by her side that actually knew about it. You know what this jade pendant is? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Dibei-chan stared deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and spoke. That jade pendant is a family token. Before, I had just so happened to have accidentally seen a similar pendant in Fengbo country. A family token? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. From which family? The Lan family. Dibei-chen's words were blunt. As long as somebody was on at least his level, they would all know that this jade pendant belonged to the Lan family. But the strange thing was, why is this jade pendant with Bailey Hongzhuang? Since it was a family token, it was very precious. Furthermore, the jade pendant was something only directly related descendants of the Lan family could have. It'd be extremely strange for it to have fallen into the hands of an outsider. The Lan family? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrow. Fengbo country doesn't have a Lan family. I never said that the Lan family was in Fengbo country. Rather, it's an aristocratic family famous for being on the apex of cultivation, the Lan family. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart couldn't help but be shocked. As the family head in her past life, she knew very clearly just how powerful of a background it was to be most prestigious aristocratic cultivation family on the continent. According to reason, a direct descendant of such a family usually wouldn't go to such a small, unknown country like Fengbo. Moreover, her parents were being chased, making the possibility of them coming willingly almost zero. Watching Bailey Hongzhuang lower her head and think deeply, Dibei-chen's deep, ocean-like eyes flashed with intelligence. The fact that Bailey Hongzhuang possessed the jade pendant alone was enough to prove her connection with the Lan family. Otherwise, how could she even have the chance to hang it around her neck? Wife, do you have a relationship with the Lan family? Dibei-chan slowly asked, his handsome face unusually serious. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her head. The moonlight was dim specks of light falling on Dibei-chen's elegant and perfect face, letting her clearly see his appearance. After a long while, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke aloud. Can I trust you? Dibei-chen's eyes changed as his lips formed a quiet smile. You and I are husband and wife now. Of course you can trust me. Seeing how Dibei-chan was still speaking so flippantly, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't bother to talk to him again, turning around to leave. Dibei-chan caught her hand and suddenly pulled, reversing their positions so she was under him. It was just like before, but this time he was even closer to her. I was saying the truth. Dibei-chan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes gentle. You have to believe, no matter what, I won't ever do anything to hurt you. The words were spoken by Dibei-chan like an oath, firm and devoted. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes slowly changed. In that moment, she saw Dibei-chen's true dedication. The reason she asked this question was because although she and Dibei-chen's relationship was a bit messy, she still believed that he wouldn't harm her. Sometimes there doesn't need to be any reason to have a heart-to-heart. If two people believe each other to be able to get along, then it counts as having gotten along. Whatever you want to say or ask, you can just talk frankly. Dibei-chan smiled. I won't tell anyone. A gentle smile blossomed on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Actually, I'm not a daughter of the Bailey family. Hearing her words, Dibei-chen's eyes that were usually still and tranquil like a lake suddenly became turbulent, the waves similar to a stormy sea. This was a possibility he hadn't ever thought of before. Earlier, he had already sent some people to search Bailey Hongzhuang's background, but still hadn't ever heard anything about this. He was very clear of his own abilities. If he still couldn't find out, then that's just how deeply guarded of a secret that was. Chapter 100. I found out when I left the general's household through my mother's diary. As for the jade pendant, my biological mother hung it on my neck before she left me. If you hadn't known about this jade pendant, I still never would have known what it represented. A Lan family daughter. That was the first thing Dibei-chen's mind came to. But after thinking about it, he knew that it was impossible. He was very clear what kind of a monster the Lan family was. How could the powerful Lan family let a child be dropped outside? How did the general's household wife take you? Dibei-chen asked again. Bailey Hongzhuang explained, clearly telling him everything she knew from her mother's diary. She also wanted to know more about her own life. Your whole body was covered in blood? Dibei-chen's handsome face frowned. The Lan family has always been strong. Even in the entire Shengshua continent, there were very few powers that could contend with them. It was impossible for a daughter of the Lan family to be reduced to such a state. But if not so, how could a Lan family jade token be on Bailey Hongzhuang's body? Suddenly, Di Beichen's eyes flashed, suddenly recalling something. Wife, was it true that you couldn't cultivate? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, yes. So, what was the reason why you couldn't cultivate? While everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had a trash physique and couldn't cultivate, nobody knew if she was trash because of her body's constitution, if the meridians were damaged, or some other problem or not. Bailey Hongzhuang inspected Di Beichen, sensing he knew something. Otherwise, he wouldn't suddenly be asking her this. My dantian was broken. Bailey Hongzhuang replied truthfully. When she had first found out, she had thought it was very strange. In this world, people usually became trash because there was a problem with their body's constitution or the meridians were blocked. A dantian could only be broken if the body was seriously injured. At that time she was very young. It should have been almost impossible for someone to deal such a ruthless hand to her. Finally hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Di Beichen's face suddenly changed, his normally calm face revealing shock. What does my broken dantian have to do with my history? The light in Di Beichen's eyes sunk, slowly saying, I remember many years ago, the Lan family created a big stir. The most favored son of the Lan family head had betrayed the family, killing many of the family's members before leaving with his wife and daughter. Bailey Hongzhuang was startled. If such a thing really did happen in the Lan family, then could it be that? It impacted the Lan family greatly. Lan Yunxiao was the most promising candidate to become family head, so nobody could understand why he would suddenly turn his back on the Lan family. This was a secret the Lan family had deliberately kept hidden from the world, so many people only knew of the results, and not what actually had happened. You mean I could be that Lan Yunxiao's daughter? Bailey Hongzhuang asked aloud. Di Beichen pondered. It's not impossible. Your jade pendant is a Lan family token, something that only direct descendants of the Lan family possess. It's impossible for it to fall into the hands of outsiders. My parents seemed like they were fleeing from something and was forced to leave me with the general's household. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Was it the Lan family that killed my parents? Danton. A place 2 points below the navel where Qi resides. Chapter 101. At that time I was very young, so although I've heard about it, I had never really cared about it. That's why I don't really know much of the details. Di Beichen sighed slightly. I'll send some people to search for news about what happened. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded a little, not refusing Di Beichen's help. Thank you. Right now, she didn't have enough strength to even touch that level. If Di Beichen helped, then she could learn a lot more. But Di Beichen's heart was actually very heavy. If that was really Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, then wouldn't she become the entire Lan family's enemy? Although he and Bailey Hongzhuang haven't known each other for long, he was very clear about her temper. Once Bailey Hongzhuang confirms the face, she'll definitely choose to take revenge. By that time he could only fear something tragic waiting to happen. The night passed without any more words. Bailey Hongzhuang was immersed in the information about the Lan family's jade pendant. Although she wasn't completely certain about the news, after hearing what happened in the Lan family, there was a small premonition in her heart. This was her origins. She believed that Lan Yunxiao would never turn his back on the Lan family for no reason whatsoever. Something must have happened that he couldn't bear patiently, making him choose to take his wife and daughter to leave the Lan family. Originally, she had thought that her parents were ordinary people. Even if they were being chased, there was still a chance of survival if they were lucky. Now she knew her parents were being chased by the Lan family. With how powerful the Lan family was, once they went all out, the possibility of them living is close to none. Even though she wasn't clear what happened so long ago, she could clearly imagine just how tragic it was. Di Beichen also had a sleepless night. The shock of finding Bailey Hongzhuang's undeniable identity was simply too great. The surprise he had gotten when she told him he wasn't Bailey Jintao's biological daughter was nothing compared to the shock he felt from her actually being a Lan family daughter. The reason couldn't be simple. They got up early the next morning. Today, they needed to enter the royal palace to thank the emperor and empress's grace. Meanwhile, News about Prince Chen's marriage was circulated in the streets, and Bailey Gentao's bout of anger made everyone sigh with emotion. So it was General Bailey who chose to cut off all father-daughter ties to Princess Chen first. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang had married from Qinzhuang Garden. I'm afraid that General Bailey's intestines are probably turning green from regret right now. He probably never thought that Princess Chen would be so amazing. In comparison, Bailey Yuyan simply can't even be compared to Princess Chen. What outstanding cultivational talent! She's just running a scam. The general's household became the juiciest gossip in the imperial city. From the start, many people were concerned for Bailey Hongzhuang's existence in the general's household. Now that the Bailey Hongzhuang's so powerful, the general's household naturally became the center of attention. I heard my young master say that Princess Chen's beauty was fully worthy of being the most beautiful woman in the imperial city. When Prince Chen was married yesterday, my family's young master got to attend the ceremony. Right, I also heard that Princess Chen was actually even more beautiful than the Prime Minister's daughter, Li Yue. It's reasonable to call Princess Chen the most beautiful woman in the imperial city. By the time Bailey Hongzhuang returned from the royal palace, the title of Most Beautiful Lady of the imperial city was already pinned to her body. But Bailey Hongzhuang only wanted to sleep. I'll return to my room to rest. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't get a wink of sleep with Bewitching. From yesterday until now, she was more tired than she'd be after fighting a troop of people. Wifey, I also want to go back to the room and rest. Bewitching smiled brilliantly. Chapter 102. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and smiled. The room next door, please. Wifey, this is the room where we sleep together. Bewitching's eyes were limpid as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang eagerly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrow. Then, should I go sleep in the other room? Last night she was played like a joke by this guy. She won't ever let something like that happen again. Never mind, it's better I go to the other room. Bewitching reluctantly let go, releasing his grip on the doorknob. Creak. Bailey Hongzhuang locked the door without hesitation. Her whole body was relaxed, nevertheless, returning to her room was still the best. Bewitching looked at the door with a smile before turning and entering the room beside it. If Bailey Hongzhuang was there, she would see that the furnishings in the two rooms were nearly identical. Even before she married, Bewitching already had everything ready. Seeing Bewitching clap his hands, Heimu immediately appeared in the room and bowed. Lord, send someone to help me check out what happened with the Lan family's Lan Yunxiao. Make sure to be discreet, don't let anyone know. Bewitching's voice was low, his handsome face revealing not the slightest bit of emotion. Heimu's face was doubtful when he heard Bewitching's words. They didn't have any connection with the Lan family, so why would his little lord suddenly think of investigating what happened with the Lan family? But after following him for so long, with just a glance at his little lord's face, he was very clearly that his little lord was very serious. He immediately went to action, not daring to tarry. I'll start now. After Heimu left, Bewitching's pupils shone with deep light. If this was all true, then how will Bailey Hongzhuang act? The Lan family was a great power Bailey Hongzhuang just couldn't even begin to compete with. His heart couldn't help but worry about her. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't rest and directly started to cultivate. At first, because the royal hunting feast was very soon, she wanted to increase her strength as much as possible, becoming an overnight hero, a dark horse. But since learning about the Lan family yesterday, her will to cultivate only intensified. In front of the Lan family and such monsters without enough strength, she didn't even have the right to speak. Since she's living a second life, she absolutely will not allow herself to leave any regrets. For everything she needed strength. After 3 days, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to go to Godly Doctor Square. Because of the marriage, she didn't go to Godly Doctor Square for 3 whole days. Now it was time for her to return. But just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, Bewitching's voice rang out behind her. Is wifey going to Godly Doctor Square? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to see Bewitching sitting in his wheelchair outside the house, a faint smile currently on his face as he looked at her. Right. Bewitching came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, smiling quietly. Wifey, the weather's good today. Shall we go for a walk together? Hearing his words, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned, confused. Knowing Bewitching's personality, he wouldn't be the type to like window shopping. Why would he suddenly ask her to go on a walk? In any case, wifey is now Princess Chan. Usually the clothes you wear are always very simple and neat, so it'd be better to buy some new ones. Even if you don't want to wear it every day, just at least wear it when we visit the royal palace. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. No matter what, she was now one of Prince Chen's people and represented his honor. For Prince Chen's face, it indeed wouldn't be appropriate for her to attend any gatherings with such plain clothing. Okay, Bailey Hongzhuang agreed. Princess Chan is truly worthy of being the #1 beauty of the imperial city. Each and every move is just simply beautiful to the extreme. Bewitching smiled as he listened to everyone talk, a long slanted eyebrow raising. #1 beauty of the imperial city? Prince probably doesn't know, but right now, everyone calls Princess Chan the #1 beauty of the imperial city. Heimu's face revealed pride as he reported, before, the title as the #1 beauty of the imperial city used to linger between Bailey Yuyan and Li Yuyue. But since Princess showed her face, this title fell on her head undisputed. Bailey Hongzhuang had also heard about this when she was chatting with Dong Sairu, but hadn't actually thought it was a real title that actually fell on her body. Those people were just too bored. Bewitching looked at the calm Bailey Hongzhuang standing at his side. Broken fragments of gold-like sunlight were sprinkled on her body, covering her in a golden luster. Even without the use of makeup, her face was just as clear and attractive. Each and every move contained a certain elegance, a unique grace to it. The #1 beauty of the imperial city. Not just in name only but also in reality. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled, gazing at Bewitching to see the warm smile on his face. His praise was completely sincere. Will being the #1 beauty of the imperial city give you food to eat? It's only good to listen to. Bailey Hongzhuang spoke indifferently. She didn't care one bit for such a title with only false reputation. Nikhang Market was a top-notch clothing store in the imperial city. Whether it was a merchant's miss or official's miss, they all loved to come here and buy clothing. Even though the prices were far from ordinary clothing stores, its business was still exceptionally rich. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching arrived at Nikhang Market, the whole store seemed to turn quiet for an instant. They didn't expect for the winds to blow straight, letting Prince and Princess Chan visit their shop today. This time, the emperor went in person to the prince's palace, signifying that Prince Chen's position rose somewhat. At the very least, it meant that Prince Chan still held a certain place in the emperor's heart, or he never even would have bothered to attend the wedding. Even though usually Bewitching was often bullied, that was only by the crown prince. Only princes in this generation dared to do so, other people wouldn't even dare. Nikhang Market's lady proprietress, Wei Nikhang, immediately came over and welcomed them. Prince Chan, Princess Chan, it's an honor to be in your presence. It seems like Prince Chan must have come to buy Princess Chan some garments? This was Wei Nichang's first time meeting Prince and Princess Chan. Although Prince Chan was sitting in a wheelchair, his back was perfectly straight, and you couldn't see the slightest bit of depression. His handsome appearance naturally needed no words, his character exuding a certain grace that would make one gasp in admiration. She felt that the way this Prince Chan was completely different from Prince Chan that was always getting bullied in the rumors. The aura he emitted and the mannerisms he displayed could be in no way compared to regular people. Only it was truly a shame that he was crippled. Bewitching smiled faintly, right? Wifey, do you see any clothes you like? Bewitching's voice was gentle, gazing at Bailey Hongzhuang's face like his beloved treasure. Lady proprietress must be very busy with her own things. We can just look around on our own. Hearing his words, Wei Nikhang bowed. Well, if Prince or Princess requires my aid, feel free to give me a shout anytime. The peace in Nikhang Market was restored. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the store filled with clothes. Whether it was material or workmanship, they were all first class. With such quality, it was no surprise that Nikhang Market was so popular. Chapter 104. At this time, a figure sudden appeared in Nikhang Market. It was the Prime Minister's daughter, the current Crown Princess Li Yuyue. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang also in Nikhang Market, Li Yuyue's eyes couldn't help but stiffen. Her face revealed traces of disgust. Bailey Hongzhuang picked through the clothes, Although her favorite color was a plain and simple white, since she became Princess Chan in the future, she'll have to go to the palace often. If she was dressed completely in white every time she visited, it wouldn't be quite appropriate, so she had to choose a few other colors. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes sharpened, landing on a white dress. The dress was as white as snow, embellished with designs of blooming peach flowers. It wasn't overly fancy or complicated, but instead felt bright and fresh. Thinking about the peach blossoms in Qinzhuang Garden, a trace of a smile spread on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. This was the dress she liked most. A slender arm fell on the dress just as Bailey Hongzhuang picked it up. Lifting her head, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the woman, confused only to see Li Yuyue's face, looking at her disdainfully. "This dress, I want it." Opening her mouth, Li Yuyue's voice was domineering, not allowing Bailey Hongzhuang to speak a single word. An utterly enchanting smile formed from the corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. "Miss Li, the dress seemed to be in this princess's hands first, and is thus mine." Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang dare to refute her, Li Yuyue's complexion ashened. "I said I wanted this dress, so it's mine." "I never knew Miss Li was actually so overbearing." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was still clear and gentle. "Only your overbearing attitude means nothing to me." Her right hand slightly forceful, Bailey Hongzhuang directly pulled the dress into her arms. This woman was just too arrogant, choosing her target. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, was never one easy to be bullied. "Bailey Hongzhuang." Li Yuyue raised her voice. "I am the majestic crown princess. Daring to offend me, do you want to die?" "Haha." Bailey Hongzhuang laughed softly, but the light in her eyes began to grow cold. "Miss Li, you still haven't married the crown prince. Right now you're only the future crown princess. Aren't you just anxious to get married? It's still better for Miss to rely on her family." Bailey Hongzhuang played it down as she looked at Li Yuyue, the meaning in her words clear. Li Yuyue was startled and didn't expect for Bailey Hongzhuang to actually say such a thing, that she and the crown prince still hadn't married, making her only the future crown princess. By just looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's haughty appearance, her heart couldn't help but burst with anger. At first, when Bailey Yuyan was disfigured, she became the #1 beauty of the imperial city. But she never expected for Bailey Hongzhuang to appear and steal her title. It was just too hateful. Even if she used to only have hatred with Bailey Yuyan and had no relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, now she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was even more hateful than Bailey Yuyan. "In any case, I am the future crown princess while you are no more than a small princess. To dare to challenge me, do you actually still believe His Highness the Crown Prince will look for you to treat him?" TL note. In Chinese, Crown Princess is Tai Zi Fei, whereas Princess is just Wang Fei. It makes the comparison much more obvious. Right now, Li Yuyue could only think about beating down Bailey Hongzhuang. For the past 2 days since her title as the #1 beauty of the imperial city was robbed, she could feel everyone look at her with different eyes, and the highborn women she didn't get along with often came to mock her. Today her mood wasn't very good, so she decided to come to Jichang Market and buy some clothes to improve her spirit. But she didn't expect to meet enemies on a narrow road. The woman who put her in such a bad temper, Bailey Hongzhuang. Princess is changed to Wang Fei. Chapter 105. Taking this opportunity, no matter which method she uses to beat Bailey Hongzhuang, she'll definitely teach her just who is the phoenix and who is the pheasant. "Miss Li, you said it yourself, you're only the future crown princess. When you get married, come back and say those words to me again." Bailey Hongzhuang's pace was steady as walked over to the front side, still holding on to the dress. She still wanted to look at the other clothes in Jichang Market. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you're going overboard," Li Yuyue shouted, stomping her foot. She really couldn't understand. Bailey Hongzhuang clearly only married a crippled prince. How could she be so arrogant? Everybody thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be unhappy and depressed, but Bailey Hongzhuang was still as proud and arrogant as ever, completely defying everybody's expectations. "Miss Li, even if you're happy shouting abuse in the streets like a shrew, I am not the same." Li Yuyue's face turned ugly when she heard her remark. Bailey Hongzhuang actually called her a shrew? The future crown princess a shrew? Li Yuyue and Bailey Hongzhuang's argument attracted many people's attention. Usually, for people who come to Jichang Market, they all held a certain level of status. When everybody saw Li Yuyue and Bailey Hongzhuang confronting each other, They knew it was going to get interesting. Many of them knew that Li Yuyue had been sulking in Prime Minister's mansion for the past few days when her title of #1 beauty in the Imperial City was taken by Bailey Hongzhuang. Now watching Bailey Hongzhuang and Li Yuyue cross swords, their hearts secretly praised Bailey Hongzhuang. Chen Wangfei's mouth was truly sharp. Li Yuyue couldn't even fight back, especially the tone of her voice and stance. She and Li Yuyue simply couldn't even be compared on the same level. Li Yuyue was clearly the one who took the initiative to look for trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang, but it was Bailey Hongzhuang who was teaching her a lesson. Look, Li Yue's face is green, because when she became the future crown princess, she turned as proud as a peacock. She was just itching to flaunt her marriage with the crown prince. I think it's disgusting. Chen Wangfei is truly unusual. This time, Li Yuyue could be said to have met a brick wall. Everyone in the crowd held the same feeling of watching a play. Normally it was rare to see such amazing drama, and they all were looking forward to seeing how it would play out. Li Yuyue walked up to Bailey Hongzhuang in large strides, her beautiful face cold. Her arrogant air couldn't be hidden. Bailey Hongzhuang, if you won't leave this dress behind today, you'll never leave Jichang Market stores. So many people were watching in Jichang Market. If today she lost face, how could she show her face to anyone again? Are you threatening this prince's wife? A magnetic, deep voice suddenly sounded, but the tone was cold and gloomy. Li Yuyue couldn't help but be startled, discovering Bewitching's gaze landing on her body. She didn't expect for Bewitching to suddenly speak now, and couldn't help but feel somewhat embarrassed. But Li Yuyue quickly recovered her haughty appearance, right? And if she doesn't apologize to me right here and now, I absolutely will not allow her to leave here tonight. Opening her mouth, Li Yuyue actually dragged Bewitching in. She was very clear on Bewitching's status and knew that he only a prince in name. Before His Highness, the crown prince could bully this guy happily, so how could she be afraid of such a fellow? Just a prime minister's daughter is actually so arrogant. I never saw someone so lacking in manners. Today this prince has opened his eyes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.